Chapter 238. Quantitative Strength. Hearing this, Chen Daoxian looked up and down the weird magic weapon with great interest. How to quantify it? Could it be that by injecting true essence and divine sense into this magic weapon, it can automatically judge the strength of a monk? Ah! Chen Daochu was stunned for a moment, then shook his head and said, "Of course not." Chen Daoxian couldn't help laughing. It seemed that he thought too much. This was not an online game from the previous life, and it also showed that the character's combat effectiveness was not enough. Say it again. Even if this magic weapon can judge the strength of a monk by the strength of the monk's true essence and spiritual consciousness, it is not accurate. After all, the comprehensive strength of a monk is also affected by realm, magic weapon, secret method, etc. This instrument is called Meteor Black Wall, and the main body is made from the fifth order spiritual or meteorite. Meteorite ink gold? Chen Daoxian looked at Chen Daochu with a shocked expression. How much did you spend on this thing? Chen Daochu stretched out a palm and said embarrassingly, 50 million spirit stones. Chen Daoxian shook his head. No wonder Chen Yuan Jianzong only bought it from a big family. Who can buy this kind of thing in an ordinary family? Hearing this, Chen Daochu and Chen Fusheng nodded in agreement. In fact, the same is true for the Linglong Pagoda of the Nine Ruins, an instrument purchased by the Chen family from Chen Yuan Jianzong. Chen Yuan Jianzong's magical artifact hall often introduces some strange artifacts to the immortal clan of Wangxinghai, some of which are quite useful, such as the Nine Ruins Linglong Pagoda, while others are quite tasteless. But the major families did not dare to refuse. It's not just because you are afraid of the power of Chen Yuan Jianzong, but other families in Wangxinghai have purchased these instruments. If you don't buy them, you will easily be surpassed by other families in the long run. For example, the magic weapon of the Linglong Pagoda of the Nine Ruins has greatly helped the training of the children of the major families. The same is true for the meteorite wall in front of him. Who knows if it will help to improve the strength of the family cultivator in the future? Even if there is no help, it can help the family to identify the strength of their own disciples. Compared with sparring, this kind of test is more intuitive and does not hurt the harmony of the monks in the clan. Don't think it's a good thing to have wrestling events within the family. Because this kind of competition is often linked to cultivation resources, once the competition is linked to interests, there will definitely be conflicts in the end. For a family, unity comes first. Therefore, Chen Daoxian rarely heard of any immortal clan engaging in fighting competitions within the family. Since its main body is made of meteorite ink gold, it must be judged by absorbing the monk's attack to judge the strength of the monk. Right. Chen Daochu knew that Chen Daoxuan's weapon refining level was still higher than his, and nodded. Not only that, there is also a small cave inside this magic weapon, which is specially used to absorb the aftermath of the monk's attack. It's still a little inaccurate to measure a monk's strength by the strength of his attack, but it's much better than measuring his cultivation base. Chen Daoxian nodded in agreement, then glanced at Chen Fusheng beside him, and said with a smile, "That's why you called Fusheng here, right?" Hey. Chen Daochu smiled. "How is it? What is Fusheng's test result?" "I haven't tested it yet." Chen Daochu shook his head and said with a smile, "We have just prepared for the test, and you will be here, young patriarch." Hear this. An expression of interest appeared on Chen Daoxuan's face immediately. "That's right, Fusheng, go and test it." After thinking for a while, Chen Daoxian added, "No hurry, let's test step by step, Fusheng. First you don't use any sword tricks or magic weapons, just explode the infuriating attack, then use the sword art with empty hands, and finally go all out." Hearing Chen Daoxuan's order, Chen Fusheng cupped his hands and said, "Yes." Next moment, Chen Fusheng stood in front of this dark black ink wall, ready to wait. "Test here, there will be no problem, right?" Chen Daoxian was a little worried. Although Chen Fusheng has only refined his qi to the 9th level, his true qi has already been polished to a perfect state. The strength of his true qi has already reached the limit state mentioned in the Chenyuan Sword Classic. Going a step further, you can only condense true essence. Under normal circumstances, Chen Fusheng's infuriating eruption, the aftermath can knock down a large cargo ship, and if it is tested here, the entire laboratory will be destroyed. Hearing Chen Daoxuan's question, Chen Daochu frowned and said, "There should be no problem. I asked the people in Shenyuan Jianzong's Dharma Artifact Hall. This artifact comes with a cave that absorbs the aftermath and can absorb the full blow of Jindan Cultivator. In theory, even if the nascent soul cultivator came to test, there would be no big problem." Hearing this explanation, Chen Daoxian stopped talking. Thinking about it, the magic weapon purchased with 50 million spirit stones, if there is no way, wouldn't it be so many spirit stones in vain? Between the two talking, Chen Fusheng ran his infuriating qi, stomped his feet and sunk his shoulders, and slammed his palm towards the ink wall. Boom! The air was torn apart with a loud roar. In the end, Chen Fusheng's jade-like palm slammed heavily on the meteorite wall. I saw that a circle of light lit up from the contact between the palm of Chen Fusheng's right palm and the meteorite wall, and finally filled the entire meteorite wall. Besides, this magical tool called Yunmobi was unscathed. Chen Fusheng couldn't damage the magic weapon made of meteorite ink, and Chen Daoxian was not surprised at all. Because meteorite has the perverted function of absorbing energy, but its properties determine that it cannot refine spirit armor or other defensive instruments. Therefore, the fifth-order spiritual ore like meteorite gold has always been in an awkward position. It is obviously the top fifth-order spiritual mine, but its practical value is far inferior to other fifth-order spiritual mines. Otherwise, this magic weapon is definitely more than 50 million spirit stones. Chen Daoxian and Chen Daochu stared intently at this magical instrument, only to see the diffused aperture, after covering the entire ink wall, condensed from the outermost periphery toward the center. In the end, a big one was left on the dark ink wall. Is this what you call quantification? Should be. Chen Daoxian frowned. A 9th-level qi refining cultivator who understands the sword intent, the quantitative value obtained is only 1. So, wouldn't the ordinary qi refining cultivator not even reach 1, talking? Chen Daoxuan's divine sense transmission called a qi refining monk from the Magical Instrument Research Institute and instructed, "You, attack this black wall with all your strength. Young patriarch, can you use a weapon?" "Yes, do your best." "Yes." The cultivator of the 7th level of qi refining said excitedly. I saw him in front of Chen Daoxian and the others, took out a mouthful of a first-order high-grade flying sword, and the 9-footed sword beam shot out from the flying sword. Next moment, the flying sword attacked on the black ink wall. But the strange thing is that the value displayed by the meteorite ink wall this time is actually 0. Seeing this value, even though this qi refining 7th-level cultivator was not sure what it meant, he still felt a little ashamed instinctively. "Okay, you go out first." "Yes." Hearing this, the cultivator of the 7th level of qi refining, Fuzi, resigned. Chen Daoxian watched the other party leave, turned to Chen Fusheng and said, "Fusheng, continue." Chen Fusheng nodded, and this time, he used the branch of the sword intent of the earth Xing that he had understood, the sword intent of the thick earth. With the addition of the thick soil sword intent, the rock sword art burst out with power far exceeding the limit of this sword art. When Chen Daochu saw the khaki sword energy condensed by infuriating energy, he felt a faint chill on his back. Obviously, the power of this sword is enough to threaten him, the Foundation Establishment Cultivator. Chen Fusheng pursed his lips and said nothing. The khaki sword qi bombarded the dark black ink wall again. This time, the value 2 appeared on the meteorite wall. The third time, Chen Fusheng went all out, not only using true qi and sword intent, but also magic weapons. His third attack finally left a value of 3 on the meteorite wall. Seeing this, Chen Daoxian turned his head to Chen Daochu and said, "You also try." Hearing this, Chen Daochu, who was eager to try, nodded. Since there is no realm bonus, the values obtained by Chen Daochu are 1 and 2, respectively. That is to say, according to the judgment of Yunmobi, Chen Fusheng, who has reached the limit of true qi, is comparable to Chen Daochu, who has just established his foundation. And with the addition of sword intent and magic weapon, Chen Fusheng's ultimate attack was about 1.5 times stronger than that of Chen Daochu. I have to say, the comparison is pretty clear. Chen Daochu said that he was not Chen Fuxing's opponent in private discussions, which seemed to be true. Chen Daoxian couldn't help but feel extremely curious about his own strength. It stands to reason that with his limit state real energy strength, it is only a thin line from the mana of an ordinary Zifu cultivator, but he doesn't know how many values he can reach. Think of this. Chen Daoxian rubbed his arm and said with a smile, Daochu, get out of the way, I'll try it too. Okay. Chen Daochu smiled and stepped aside. Both of them looked at Chen Daoxian eagerly. For Chen Daoxuan's true strength. Not only is the outside world very confused, even the cultivators of the Chen family are not clear. Even Chen Daoxian himself did not have a clear understanding of his own strength. Now that with this meteorite ink wall, I can know exactly what the limit of my attack is. Next second. Chen Daoxuan's figure is like electricity. The true essence and the power of the flesh all exploded, and a punch slammed into the dark black ink wall. Boom! A thunderous sound resounded in the ears of the three of them. Fortunately, a sound insulation formation has been laid out here, otherwise the outside world will hear this loud noise, and I am afraid that the world will be turned upside down. On the dark black ink wall, circles of light circles are like ripples in lake water, constantly escaping outward. Counting down, there are a total of 11 rings. Really? The value of 11 was finally displayed on the meteorite ink wall. That is to say, without sword intent or magic weapon, Chen Daoxuan's explosive attack power is nearly 4 times that of Chen Fuxing's ultimate attack, and more than 5 times that of Chen Daochus. Although Chen Daochus' own strength is not strong, but because of his good magic weapon, he can probably represent the average level of one Xinghai Foundation establishment cultivator. That is to say, Chen Daoxuan's flat punch is 5 times the limit attack of an ordinary Foundation establishment cultivator. Obviously, there is already a fundamental gap between him and ordinary Foundation establishment cultivators. His face was solemn. Chen Daoxian condensed his true essence into a star, and bombarded the meteorite wall again. This time, the amazing 37 was displayed on the meteorite ink wall. That is to say, the CU sword intent, which is close to the 3rd level of sword intent, has a bonus of 2.7 times to my attack. Chen Daoxian frowned. Immediately, he raised his head again. So, what about using the flying sword of life? The starlight condensed by the Qingying sword once again bombarded the meteorite ink wall. Then, seeing the value on the ink wall, Chen Daoxuan's pupils shrank, 46. That is to say, the bonus of the flying sword of life to the basic attack power is only 0.9 times. After some tests, Chen Daoxian finally got a clearer idea of the specific value of the realm and magic weapon's bonus to strength. In the past, he only knew that the sword intent realm had a huge bonus to the cultivator's strength, about twice as much, but he didn't know how much. Now, he finally knew the specific value. The value 46 displayed on the meteorite ink wall. It is Chen Daoxuan's true yuan attack 10 plus 2. 7 times the Kendo realm bonus 27 plus 0. 9 times the magic weapon bonus 9, a total of 46. As if thinking of something, Chen Daoxian moved in his heart. I don't know, what is the value obtained by melee combat with the Qingying sword? Think of this. Chen Daoxian couldn't take care of Chen Daochu and Chen Fuxing who were frightened. Recalling the Qingying sword, holding the hilt in the right hand, the human and the sword are united, turning into a huge star, slashing on the dark black ink wall. This time, the value on the meteorite ink wall actually increased again. Really? The realm of Kendo really has a bonus effect on the cultivation of the body. Seeing the amazing 51 value on the ink wall, Chen Daoxian looked surprised. Although the difference between 51 and 46 seems to be small, it means that Chen Daoxuan's body training is not useless, and it can also be enhanced by Chen Daoxuan's Kendo realm. This is what excites Chen Daoxian the most. Although Chen Daoxuan's basic physical strength is only 1, but with the addition of Kendo realm and magic weapon, it suddenly expands to 5. Don't underestimate the value of 5, it is actually quite impressive. You must know that ordinary foundation establishment cultivators simply cannot reach this value. Inside the laboratory, Chen Daochu and Chen Fusheng were completely sluggish when they saw the value of 51 that Chen Daoxian left on the meteorite wall. Seeing this, Chen Daoxian did not test the space sword intent anymore. After all, almost no one knows about his comprehension of the space sword intent, and Chen Daoxian simply no longer exposes it in the style of leaving everything behind. This magic weapon is a bit interesting, let me use it for a while. After speaking, Chen Daoxian looked at Chen Daochu. At this time, Chen Daochu finally recovered from the shock. He immediately nodded and said, "Of course, this was originally bought for the family cultivator." Chen Daoxian thought for a while and said, "Forget it, you can buy another one from the Hall of Magical Instruments of Chenyuan Jianzong." What? When Chen Daochu heard this, he seemed a little unresponsive. The 50 million spiritual stone magical weapon, the young patriarch said to buy it. Chen Daochu couldn't help sighing that the family's wealth are different now. Sure enough, upon hearing this, Chen Fusheng, who had a bitter face, immediately showed a smile. Chen Daoxian borrowed this magic weapon. Naturally, he will go to the seabed of Wangxinghai to retreat. He needs to use this magic tool to judge the extent of his strength improvement. And Chen Fusheng, as the head of the military department of the Chen family, definitely needs this magic weapon to motivate the cultivators of the military department of the family to improve their strength. In the past, everyone had only a vague understanding of the improvement of their own strength. The higher the monk's cultivation, the more so. For example, Chen Daoxian, if his strength increases from 46 to 47, he probably won't feel anything, he will only feel that he has made some progress. But through the magic tool of the meteorite ink wall, it can be most intuitively reflected. This intuitive response will greatly enhance the cultivator's enthusiasm for cultivation. Most of the time, cultivators slack off in their cultivation because they fail to see their own progress day after day. If you can quantify your progress a little bit, I am afraid that no monk will be slack, but will be full of passion. Chen Daoxian was full of passion at this moment. He is eager to see how far his strength can be improved during this trip to the Myriad Star Sea Demon Monkey Mountain Retreat. Chapter 239. Southwest Waters of Wangxinghai. Demon Mountain. Returning to the real Demon World Passage in Imo Yuan Mountain again, Chen Daoxian found that Luo Shuyuan, the patriarch of the Merman clan, and his daughter Luo Li were guarding the real Demon Realm Passage for Chen Daoxian. Lord! Luo Shuyuan, who was meditating with his eyes closed, sensed Chen Daoxian's arrival and greeted him from a distance. Not far from the cave mansion opened by Chen Daoxian, Luo Li rebuilt another cave mansion. Now, Luo Li also sensed the arrival of Chen Daoxian and flew out of the cave. Seeing the father and daughter in front of him, Chen Daoxian said sternly, "Patriarch Luo and Fairy Luo, both of you have worked hard during this time. Where is the Lord? These are what my mermen should do." The otherworld passage is a big deal. If the world monsters pass through the passage, it will bring disaster to the Sea of Stars. Wouldn't my mere people bear the brunt of it? Hearing this, Chen Daoxian nodded. Immediately, he looked at Luo Li again and asked, "When does Fairy Luo plan to open up the Purple Mansion?" Hear this. Luo Li's expression froze, and even Luo Shuyuan looked a little embarrassed. Luo Li's face was flushed red, and she looked like she was hesitant to say anything. "Last time I heard the words of the Patriarch Luo, it seems that your mere people did not assist in opening up the treasures of the Zifu." Right. Luo Shuyuan looked happy when he heard this. Really? The next moment, Chen Daoxian took out a jade bottle from the storage bag, opened the restriction on the jade bottle, and a lilac 9-pattern spirit pill was in it. It is the treasure that the foundation establishment cultivators dream of, the Zifu Dan. This is, for me. Luo Li looked at Chen Daoxian in disbelief, but this medicine pill is really too precious. Hearing this, Luo Shuyuan, who was originally happy, also turned gloomy. Indeed, for today's mere people, this medicine pill is too precious. Although with the wealth possessed by the Merman race, it is not that they cannot afford this medicine pill. But Qin Dao Xian was able to successfully buy Zifu Dan in Sangzhou. In addition to spending spirit stones, he also had to take in a lot of favors. Zifudan is not a commodity that money can buy. Otherwise, there wouldn't be so many wealthy cultivators who couldn't buy Zifu pill. Seeing the expressions of Luo Xiuyuan and Luo Li, Qin Dao Xian knew what they were thinking, and said with a smile, "Why, do you guys, as a subordinate race of my Qin family, still want to disobey? Don't dare." Hearing this, Luo Xiuyuan only felt a warm feeling in his heart. He looked at Luo Li and nodded at her. Luo Li took a deep look at Qin Dao Xian, took the Zifu pill in his hand, and said, "I have a bloodline from the merman race. I can transform when I reach the golden core stage." Leaving such a sentence, Luo Li seemed to be flying away. Qin Dao Xian looked at the figure of the other party fleeing, and for some reason, there was a wave in his heart. Lola's shape. In his heart, he really had a little hope. Luo Xiuyuan glanced at Qin Dao Xian with a smile, and cupped his hands. "Since the Lord is back, this subordinate will retire." Patriarch Luo walked slowly. Qin Dao Xian returned a salute. After watching Luo Xiuyuan and Luo Li leave, only Qin Dao Xian was left here. Watching him open up the mountains of Dongfu, Qin Dao Xian planned to set up a fourth-order water shelter before exploring the real demon world and retreating to practice. After all, this is the underwater world. Although he has practiced the technique of water escape, he is not afraid of the deep-sea environment. But as a terrestrial life, he is still somewhat unaccustomed to an environment that is completely seawater. This fourth-order water shelter is one of the materials he purchased from Evernight Immortal City. In addition, there is a third-order spiritual vein in Demon Ape Mountain, which is enough to support this fourth-order array. He took out the array jade slip from the storage bag. With the blessing of 30 times his comprehension, Qin Dao Xian quickly understood this array. He took out the formation flag and other formation materials, and took a look at the environment of the demonic ape mountains. Qin Dao Xian set out to set up this fourth-order water avoidance formation. Less than 3 days. A simple version of the fourth-order water avoidance array was arranged by him. The reason why it is said to be a simple version is because the complete fourth-order water shelter is enough to cover the entire Demon mountain range, and the water shelter arranged by Qin Dao Xian can only cover the mountain where his cave is located. Counting it, it is only 100 miles at most. Compared with the area of the Demon Ape Mountains, which is thousands of miles in circumference, this area is really not worth mentioning. With the arrangement of the fourth-order water avoidance array, all the seawater around was expelled by the water avoidance array, and an inverted bowl-shaped transparent film was formed on the top of the mountain. Inside the film are places such as the mountain range where Qin Dao Xian is located and the passage to another world. Outside the membrane, there is seawater. Very magical. Although this formation is good, the only drawback is that it needs to consume a lot of spiritual energy all the time to maintain the consumption of this formation by seawater pressure. If it weren't for the third-order spiritual veins in the Demon Ape Mountains, Qin Dao Xian would not dare to play like this. Even so, he did not dare to set up a water-avoiding formation that was too wide. Because the wider the range of the water avoidance formation is, the more terrifying the consumption of spiritual energy. For the third-order spiritual meridian, the water avoidance formation within a radius of hundreds of miles is just equivalent to the consumption of the fourth-order mountain protection formation that has not been attacked, and it does not have much burden on the spiritual meridian. Finish the array. Qin Dao Xian looked at the transparent film hanging above his head and nodded with satisfaction. Re-enter the cave house he opened last time. Qin Dao Xian found that the layout in the cave was slightly different from before. In the hall, a few bunches of strange spiritual plants, which are only available in the underwater world of Wangxinghai, added a bit of vitality to the originally dull cave. Qin Dao Xian knew that this must be Luo Li's handwriting. Looking at the green scene in the hall, Qin Dao Xian smiled unconsciously. Come to the retreat room. Qin Dao Xian sat cross-legged on the Wenyu futon. Next moment, with a flash of light, a black figure appeared beside Qin Dao Xian. It is his newly refined clone. Due to the separation of souls, Chen Daoxuan's Kendo realm was in the realm of the first-level Space Sword Intent and the second-level Silk Rain Sword Intent. Therefore, the avatar created by the sacrifice is the same as the Kendo realm of the deity, and it is also in this realm. As for the realm of the avatar in the future, it depends on the result of the avatar's self-cultivation. After all, the clone has no restrictions except that the cultivation base cannot exceed the deity. In other words, if the avatar's perception is better, the Kendo realm of the avatar can surpass the deity. This also means that the strength of the clone is not necessarily weaker than the deity. Of course, other people's avatars may be stronger than the deity. It is very difficult for Chen Daoxuan's avatars to do this. Because Chen Daoxuan's deity has the Hongmeng Enlightenment Classic to store his comprehension, but his clone does not. Although the deity can also use sermons to help the avatar improve understanding. But in the final analysis, the sermon is only a reduced version of the stored understanding. How can it be compared to the exaggeration of the golden scriptures absorbing the energy of chaos and feeding the understanding stardust? Thinking of this, if there is no special opportunity in the future, Chen Daoxuan's clone may not be able to keep up with the strength of the deity. But for now, Chen Daoxuan's clone is extremely powerful. Thinking of this, Chen Daoxian stretched out his palm again, and a mini magic weapon appeared in his palm, which was the magic weapon he borrowed from Chen Daochume Mobi. With the release of the Meson technique, a huge meteorite ink wall appeared in the practice room, making the originally spacious practice room instantly narrow. Without any choice, Chen Daoxian simply came outside the cave. After thinking about it, he arranged another set of high-level sound insulation formations. In this way, this place has really become a place for retreat and purification. Looking at the meteorite ink wall in front of him, Chen Daoxian nodded to the clone in black robe. I saw that the clone's eyes were like electricity, and the body was like a streamer. Turned around and punched the ink wall on the dojo. Boom! A terrifying roar sounded, but in addition, the aftermath of the attack was all absorbed by the small hole inside the ink wall. Next second, the circles of light on the meteorite ink wall flickered like ripples, and finally, a new value, 11, was displayed on the dark meteorite ink wall. 11. Chen Daoxian nodded. The basic strength of the clone is exactly the same as that of the main body, the real essence in the limit state, the physical power derived from the cultivation of the first flesh and blood. Immediately after, Chen Daoxian took out a flying sword from the storage bag. It was the flying sword that the ancestor of the Yang family gave him, the Rainbow Light Sword. Chen Daoxian has rarely used this flying sword since he was promoted to the third-rank middle-ranking sword. It stands to reason that the Rainbow Light Sword, as a third-tier high-grade flying sword, is indeed stronger than the third-tier middle-grade natal flying sword. But if you count the consumption of the true essence by the flying sword of life, it is generally not as good as the flying sword of life of the third-rank middle grade. How to choose only depends on the monk himself. Chen Daoxian chose to use the flying sword of life, so the rainbow lightsaber was dusted in his storage bag. Now, the rainbow lightsaber finally has a new owner. Then, Chen Daoxian threw it lightly, and the rainbow light sword turned into a streamer and automatically flew into the avatar's hand. The clone wearing a black robe took the rainbow sword and glanced up and down at the blade. Holding the flying sword, he charged straight towards the meteorite wall again. His choice was the same as Chen Daoxian before, and it was also a direct melee attack. Since Chen Daoxian discovered that in melee combat, the realm of Kendo can also increase physical strength, it seems that a new world has opened up. In this way, the improvement of body training is by no means useless. If his body-refining cultivation base is the same as his chi-refining cultivation base and reaches the limit derived from flesh and blood, then his basic strength can reach 20. After the addition of Kendo realm and magic weapon, his strength can definitely reach a chilling level. Boom! Just thinking about it, a roar sounded again on the meteorite wall. In the next second, a new number appeared on the ink wall. 52. Chen Daoxuan's eyes narrowed. After using the third-order high-grade magic weapon, the strength of the clone is indeed slightly stronger than that of the main body. Of course, this difference is nothing at all. If it is said that the strength of the two monks with a combat strength of 1 and 2 is obviously different, but at the level of 51 and 52, they are a little higher than the combat strength, and it is not a gap at all. Compared with this difference in the attack limit, factors such as combat experience, speed of escaping light, and defensive ability have a greater impact on the outcome of the battle. Then, what about using the space sword intent? Chen Daoxian thought, and once again ordered the clone to use the space sword intent to attack the ink wall. This time, he saw a new value, which was also the biggest attack Chen Daoxian could break out at this time. 55. Sure enough, the bonus of the complete space sword intent to strength is really terrifying. The CU sword intent, which is close to the triple realm, has only 2.7 times the bonus, while the space sword intent, which has just reached the invisible realm, actually has 3 double the bonus. Seeing this scene, Chen Daoxian not only had a sense of his own strength, but also almost had his own judgment on the strength of other monks. In the test of the meteorite ink wall, the limit state true chi is almost different from the most common true energy. In this way, my limit state true energy is probably comparable to the mana of the Zifu cultivator who has just broken through. If it is a first-level cultivator of Zifu without body training, his basic combat power should also be 10. Ordinary Zifu cultivators, even if they did not set foot on the swordsmanship, must have embarked on other avenues such as the martial arts. Their realm bonus should be doubled, and the 0.3 times bonus of the third-order low-grade magic weapon. The limit attack of an ordinary purple mansion first-floor monk should be around 23. With the increasing use of the meteorite ink wall, Chen Daoxian became more and more adept at estimating the strength of others. Of course, this was on the basis of knowing the other party's Dao state and the magical tools he possessed. Otherwise, if this information is kept secret by others, you still cannot know how strong others are. In this way, Zhou Mubai's strength is a bit terrifying. Chen Daoxian is sure that Zhou Mubai's basic strength must be close to the weakest Jindan cultivator, which is 100. If you count his physical strength, it will definitely exceed 100. Because Zhou Mubai not only took the path of chi refining, but also a body refining cultivator. Even if his basic strength is 150, plus 3 times the Kendo realm bonus, at least double the magic weapon bonus, and the unknown bonus of his own sword art to strength. Zhou Mubai's limit attack is at least 750. Zhou Mubai usually behaves so weak because Zhou Mubai has never shown his body training. Even when Chen Daoxian explored Lotus Island with him that time, he never showed his body training. If it weren't for this, Chen Daoxian would not have known that the realm of swordsmanship could actually add bonuses to physical strength. No wonder, Zhou Mubai is the 9th in the Zifu Tianjiao list. Chen Daoxian secretly said, "These monks in Wanxinghai are all old Yin ratios." He really didn't expect that Zhou Mubai was still hiding in that situation. Thinking of this, Chen Daoxian couldn't help but start to examine himself. In the recent period, he has indeed drifted a bit. It seems that starting from the Battle of Tsangzhou Corpse Tide, when he won the first merit of the battle with foundation building, the Zhou family in Guang'an Prefecture began to brag about his name intentionally or unintentionally, while downplaying Zhou Mubai's existence. Now that I think about it, what is this not a slap in the face? Is Chen Daoxian strong? Up to now, the limit attack of only 55 is less than 1/10 of Zhou Mubai's. Not to mention the strength gap between the Chen family and the Zhou family, the old-fashioned cultivators. But now, Tsangzhou, the old-fashioned immortal clan, all have a tacit understanding to let the Chen family take the majority of the benefits. When Yunshao Palace was discussing meritorious deeds, he showed his face in front of many nascent soul cultivators, losing the face of the 3 elders. After the establishment of the Tsangzhou Business Alliance, the Chen family inexplicably became the largest shareholder of the Tsangzhou Business Alliance. One by one, are they supporting me? Are they supporting my Chen family? After estimating Zhou Mubai's true strength, Chen Daoxian felt a sense of empowerment. Since you are all willing to support my Chen family, then my Chen family will stand firm and show you. Chen Daoxian said, looking in the direction of the otherworld passage. A smile appeared on the corner of his mouth. Chapter 240. Tsangzhou. Lingbei Island, the Zhou family land. The continuous palace complex is distributed in the fourth-order spiritual veins of the Zhou family land, and the building complex is looming in the misty clouds. In the palace on the highest spiritual mountain in the clan, two young Taoists were sitting in front of a chessboard and playing a game. It was the two highest-ranking rulers of the Zhou family in Guang'an Prefecture, Zhou Mingho, the ancestor of the Zhou family, and Zhou Mubai, the swordsman of Guang'an. Zhou Mingho held the sunspot in his hand, and with a pop, the sunspot fell. On the chessboard, Zhou Mubai's dragon has been slaughtered. Mubai, you lost. Zhou Mingho folded his hands into his sleeves and smiled. Zhou Mubai glanced at the dense chessboard, smiled helplessly, and cupped his hands. The patriarch's chess is far superior to me, and Mubai is convinced. Hearing this, Zhou Mingho gave Zhou Mubai a meaningful look, and said, "It's not that my chess is far superior to you, but that your heart is uncertain." As he took back the black pieces on the chessboard, he said, "Have you heard about the spirit stone coins circulating in the immortal city of Guang'an Prefecture recently?" Hearing the patriarch talking about business, Zhou Mubai said with a solemn expression, "I heard something. The genius of the Chen family is truly astonishing in talent, strength, and courage." Not only did he understand the sword intent at a young age, but he stepped into the realm of double tangibles, and his vision was incomparably long-term. Once the spirit stone coins spread in my Guang'an Prefecture, all the commercial activities of my Guang'an Prefecture will be strangled by the Chen family's throat in the future. At that time, the Chen family will surely become the uncrowned king of my Guang'an Prefecture. As the last black chess piece fell into the urn, Zhou Mingho raised his head, looked at Zhou Mubai steadily, and said, "Mubai, I know that you and Chen Daoxian have brotherhood, but you can't forget that you are my Zhou. Tianjiao is the hope of my Zhou family. Say it." Zhou Mingho stood up and looked at the vast clouds of smoke outside the palace. "Mubai dare not forget. What my Zhou family wants to do is to become the #1 clan in Sangzhou. Mubai, what you want to do is not only to restore the glory of my Zhou family ancestors, I hope you can go further and lead our Zhou family to become the Taizhou Jiang family, a family like the Ji family in Jingzhou." Zhou Mingho turned his head and looked at Zhou Mubai. Do you understand?" Zhou Mubai's face darkened slightly, but his eyes became firm again. "Mubai understands." "Okay." Zhou Mingho nodded in relief. Chen Daoxian wanted to use Lingshi coins to boil frogs in warm water to control Guang'an Prefecture's commerce and economy, but he forgot that we are monks, and monks. In the end, we have to rely on strength to speak. Ancestor, don't you want to? Zhou Mingho shook his head and said with a smile, "Don't worry, I won't break the covenant of the various ethnic groups in Sangzhou. I just want to completely integrate the Sangzhou cultivators together, just like Taizhou and Jingzhou." "Patriarch, what are you going to do?" "Let's talk about strength," Zhou Mingho sighed. "Since the Yi family lost power, Sangzhou has been without a leader for decades. It's time to end this chaotic era. I think this is not only the vision of my Zhou family, but also the shared vision of the great clans in Sangzhou." "Speak with strength," Zhou Mubai muttered. Among the cultivation forces, there are no more than two ways to speak with strength. The first is the outbreak of war, which can be divided into comprehensive wars and controllable local wars. Obviously, this method is not in line with the situation in Sangzhou, and Shenyuan Zhenzong will not allow it. Another method is that the cultivation forces send experts to learn from each other. This method is much gentler than the war between cultivation forces. They are more in line with the current situation in Sangzhou. "Patriarch, but didn't you want to push the Chen family to the front, and let my Zhou family secretly control the situation in Sangzhou?" "Yes. But I found out that I judged someone wrong." "You mean Brother Chen?" Zhou Mingho was silent for a long time, and he sighed. It is not difficult to find from his various actions that Chen Daoxian does not want to be under people, and it is nothing short of fantasy to want to control such people. In the end, is it still going to come this far? Mubai. Zhou Mingho frowned slightly. "Patriarch, don't worry, I know what to do." Zhou Mubai smiled. "Besides, it's just to decide the leader of Zhangzhou, not to destroy other ethnic groups. It's good if you understand, Zhou Mingho nodded. When this matter is over, I will relinquish the position of the Patriarch and attack the realm of Jindan with all my strength. Patriarch. Zhou Mubai stood up suddenly, but your Dao realm has just been promoted to the second level, will you break through now? I know, Zhou Mingho sighed, but I can't wait any longer. If I wait any longer, I'm afraid that I'll lose my aggressive spirit, and then the future will be even more uncertain. Hearing this, Zhou Mubai couldn't help clenching his hands. Although Zhou Mingho's cultivation has already been promoted to the Zifu consummation, his martial arts realm has just been promoted to the second-level realm, which is not as good as Chen Daoxuan's swordsmanship realm. In such a state, even if it can condense the Golden Core, the subsequent Golden Core Thunder Tribulation is probably difficult to survive. After all, thunder robbery is the power of heaven, and monks have no other way but to rely on their own strength to resist. But as Zhou Mingho said, he is already old, and if he does not condense the golden elixir, I am afraid that his lifespan will be nearing the end, and the hope of breaking through to the golden elixir will be even slimmer. Say it again. As long as the Zhou family has Zhou Mubai, the arrogance, it will only grow stronger and stronger, and there is absolutely no possibility of decline. Now that the matter behind him has been decided, why doesn't he give it his all? If you succeed, you can enjoy hundreds of years of lifespan, and if you fail, you will only become a pile of dead bones a few decades earlier. Feeling Zhou Mingho's uncompromising desire to seek the way, Zhou Mubai no longer discouraged him, but stood up straight, bowed deeply, and gave him a big gift. Southwest waters of Wangxinghai. Demon Mountain. In front of the true demon realm passage, a white figure sat cross-legged. Twilight. A shadow flashed, and a figure rushed out of the passage. It was Chen Daoxuan's clone sent to the real demon world. Seeing his avatar return safely, Chen Daoxian breathed a sigh of relief. Although he knew that with the secret treasure of Chen Fan, even if the demon master of the real demon world came, it would be difficult to catch his clone. But he was still a little worried. Now that the clone has returned safely, a heart has finally settled down. Close your eyes and share some memories with your clone. Chen Daoxian figured out what his clone had done in the opposite world in the past 6 months. All in all, his clone took advantage of the monster-slaying event of the Yuan dynasty in the real demon world, attacking everywhere and slaughtering the demons. Because of the existence of Michen Banner, the great demons and demon masters of the Yuan dynasty often found that the younger generation they cultivated had died inexplicably before they could react. This time by surprise. Chen Daoxian gained a lot, took the storage bag handed over by the clone, opened it, and there were 53 Jiyuan beads in it. This is the result of the big demons and demon masters of the late Yuan dynasty reacting. Some people turned from prey to hunters in their hunting grounds, so they frantically hunted down Chen Daoxuan's avatar. Otherwise, he could gain even more. Of course, 53 Jiyuan orbs are no longer a small number, especially the largest one was left by a Jia Yao who was equivalent to the human race's Purple Palace cultivation base. This made Chen Daoxian even more excited. Besides, Chen Daoxian also found a lot of blood crystals in the storage bag. Under the breakdown, there are a total of 18,427. In addition to the blood crystals he bought from Taizhou, the total number of blood crystals in his hand exceeded 20,000. With so many blood crystals, the market price has exceeded 2 billion spirit stones. 2 billion spirit stones may not be a big deal for the Jiang family and Ji family, who dominate a state, but it is a huge number for any cultivator family in Zhangzhou. At least for the current Chen family, this number, that's it. You must know that the Chen family's net income has reached hundreds of millions of spirit stones a year. If the Spirit Talisman factory expands in the future, the annual income will increase tenfold, and Chen Daoxian will not be surprised. In other words, this may just be the income of the Chen family in the coming year, which is really nothing to be surprised by. But blood crystals are after all a specialty of the real demon world, and many times they cannot be bought even if there are spirit stones. From this perspective, more than 20,000 blood crystals are indeed an amazing harvest. See the harvest in the storage bag. Chen Daoxian took out 53 GUN beads and 10,000 blood crystals, and then threw the storage bag to the avatar wearing a black Taoist robe, and asked him to go to the cave opened by Luo Li to improve his body training. For clones, improving body training is the best way to quickly improve their strength. In the past 6 months, Chen Daoxuan's deity has all been in retreat. Compared with the cultivation of qi, the cultivation of the body does not seem to have a bottleneck at all. As long as the cultivator's realm and resources are sufficient, he can make rapid progress all the way, which is much faster than the cultivation of qi. When Chen Daoxian improved his qi refining cultivation, he also had to consider that excessive use of medicinal herbs would cause the body to develop resistance. However, there is no such problem in improving the cultivation base. This could not help but make Chen Daoxian feel the magic of blood crystals even more. It stands to reason that Chen Daoxuan's kendo realm far exceeds his cultivation, and his cultivation should be able to improve quickly. Actually, in the past 6 months, Chen Daoxian has been refining his body in addition to qi refining every day, and he did not dare to slack off for a day, but his qi refining has only been promoted to the 5th level of foundation building. However, compared to qi refining, Chen Daoxuan's body refining has made great progress. He has reached the 4th level of derivation from flesh and blood, and he is only 1 step away from catching up with qi refining. What surprised Chen Daoxian even more was the increase in strength after the improvement of his body training. Since his true essence has been tempered by sword intent, it has reached the limit state true essence recorded in the Qianyuan Sword Sutra, so it doesn't matter whether his qi refining is upgraded to the 5th floor of the foundation or the 9th floor of the foundation. It won't have any effect on the quality of his true essence. In other words, Chen Daoxuan's cultivation level is promoted to the 5th floor of the foundation establishment, and it is only the expansion of the Sea of Qi, and the increase of true essence. As for other changes, there is no change at all. But the cultivation base is different. Chen Daoxuan's physical strength is different from his true essence, and it seems that he cannot be tempered by sword intent. Therefore, after reaching the 1st level of flesh derivation, Chen Daoxuan's physical strength is only 1, not 10, of the ultimate state real essence. However, after the cultivation base was raised to the 4th level of flesh and blood derivation, his physical strength also increased by a factor of 2, reaching 2. Don't underestimate the improvement of basic strength. In fact, after the bonus of realm and magic weapon, Chen Daoxuan's overall strength has improved considerably, reaching 60. You know, Chen Fuxing's attack limit is only 3. It is conceivable that this improvement in basic strength has greatly improved Chen Daoxuan's overall strength. This is also the reason why once a cultivator improves his cultivation, his strength is the most exaggerated. Because for monks, cultivation is the foundation of everything. Without enough cultivation as a support, no matter how high the realm and the powerful magic weapon are, they are nothing but a loft in the sky and a mirror. Of course, it is not enough just to cultivate, without realm and magic tools. Just like the high-level zombies in the corpse tied in Sangzhou, Kong has a body of power but can't exert it, but is pressed and beaten by monks whose cultivation is not as good as it. Send the clone to retreat. Chen Daoxian also couldn't wait to come to the training room of Dongfu. Dongfu practice room. Chen Daoxian sat cross-legged on the Wenyu futon with 5 hearts upside down. In front of him, there are JUN beads of different sizes. I saw him breaking open one of them with ease, and immediately, the gray chaotic energy was absorbed by the golden scriptures in his sea of knowledge. Immediately after, Chen Daoxian did the same, and the chaotic energy in the 53 JUN beads was completely absorbed by him. Next second, his consciousness sank into the sea of consciousness space. I saw that in the 120-mile round space of the sea of knowledge, there were densely packed stardust of understanding. These stardust of understanding were like starlight in the sky, floating in the sea of knowledge, revolving around the golden scriptures, which was very spectacular. Looking at these dense stardust of perception, Chen Daoxian felt an unprecedented sense of satisfaction in his heart. After so many years of epiphany cultivation, this is his most arrogant time. Although I don't know what I will get after passing the inheritance trial. But Qin Dao Xian is confident that with these comprehension stardust, he will be able to pass this inheritance trial. If he can't pass this trial even in this way, it can only prove that this trial is a joke left by the immortal before his death. But after the last trial, Qin Dao Xian was sure that this was no joke. He even doubted whether this inheritance trial was left by the immortal. Because he had obtained the cultivation method of dying soul divine light left by the immortal, even though dying soul divine light was extremely mysterious, he always felt that it was not as high as this inheritance trial. 57,864 comprehension stardust, calculated based on the time it takes 30 comprehension stardust to realize a stick of incense, enough for me to practice for 40 days in a state of epiphany. After a silent calculation, Qin Dao Xian couldn't help but burst into ecstasy. In the next second, he calmed down. Between the eyebrows, the divine patterns suddenly appeared, and soon, his consciousness came to the 7 dazzling stars like the rising sun again. In front of the inheritance palace, the Taoist man in white stood there, the expression on his face still cold, like a machine. But at the moment of seeing Qin Dao Xian, the expression of the Taoist man in white, Gu Jing Wubua, changed a little. He looked at Qin Dao Xian with a slightly condensed gaze, and said, "Space sword intent. I've seen seniors." Qin Dao Xian nodded and bowed his hands in a salute. "Thank you for your kindness, senior." But the Taoist in white didn't seem to hear Qin Dao Xian's greeting, and his tone returned to a cold tone, and said, "The 19,769th tester, your test level has increased." Trial level increase? Qin Dao Xian looked at each other in astonishment. Chapter 241. Just when Qin Dao Xian was shocked, the Taoist man in white stretched out his jade-like finger, and the scene around him suddenly changed. Next moment, from the palace on the rising sun, he came to a vast and boundless dojo. Qin Dao Xian looked at it carefully. The dojo at the foot is paved with an unknown solid stone. He raised his head. The sky was clear. Here, it seems that even the circulation of air is stagnant. About 10 feet in front of Qin Dao Xian, the Taoist man in white stood opposite him. "This is your new trial site." Hearing this, Qin Dao Xian's expression tightened, and he cupped his hands and asked, "Dare to ask the seniors, the last trial was about the cultivator's comprehension. I don't know what this new trial will test." Hearing this question, the Taoist man in white, who had been in the ancient well without waves, raised his brows slightly, his lips slightly raised, and said, "Fighting." "Fighting?" Qin Dao Xian was stunned. Fighting or fighting, for many monks who step into the path of cultivation, is almost a common thing. Especially the monks from Wanxinghai. Thanks to the war between Qianyuan Jianzong and Xianqing Dao League, Wanxinghai monks have many opportunities to fight. As long as he is not afraid of death, cultivator Wanxinghai can fight on the battlefield of Izumo all year round. Therefore, in terms of combat experience, whether it is a cultivator of Wanxinghai or a cultivator of the Izumo kingdom, it can be said to be extremely rich. But Qin Dao Xian knew that the fighting method in front of this white-clothed Taoist would definitely not be that simple. "Are you ready?" the Taoist man in white said coldly. Qin Dao Xian took a deep breath. Although he was in a state of consciousness at this time, the amazing thing was that in his perception, the body at the moment was real, and there was no illusion. If it weren't for the reminder of the golden scriptures, Qin Dao Xian would even forget that he was in a state of consciousness at the moment. Dantian gas in the sea. The natal instrument, the lotus of good fortune of the 3rd grade, and the 2-sword intents all exist intact. Except that the golden scriptures in the sea of knowledge have not been copied, Qin Dao Xian's consciousness body at this time is no different from the outside world. "Please advise." Qin Dao Xian cupped his hands. "Say it." Qin Dao Xian retreated abruptly, and then the 2 flying swords turned into streamers and flew out, taking the Taoist in white. 100 feet away, the white-robed Taoist looked calm, as if Qin Dao Xian's offensive did not exist for him at all. Qin Dao Xian clearly sensed that the Taoist man in white in front of him controlled his cultivation to the same level as him. If his guess was correct, the opponent's kendo realm would even be the same as him. This trial seems to be testing the cultivator's combat experience. And the combat experience, Chen Daoxian thinks that he is not weak. The other party is so arrogant, he must. What? Chen Dao's pupils shrank. Far away. Chen Jingjian took the lead in turning into a starlight and went straight to the face of the white-robed Taoist, but was hit by a random sword from the opponent's right hand. Block the flying sword with a sword in hand. Chen Daoxian couldn't believe his eyes. But immediately, he thought of the Taoist in white's body refining as high as 4 layers derived from flesh and blood, plus the qi refining, the two combined into one. The other party can block the flying sword, it seems. It is also normal. Just when the opponent randomly slashed Chen Daoxian into a flying sword with 2 swords, the Taoist in white moved. Chen Daoxian's face changed suddenly when he saw the Taoist man in white rushing towards him with his sword. Although he has reached the 4th level of flesh and blood derivation, he is not good at melee combat. In other words, in the current practice world, there are not many monks who are good at melee combat. Most of the monks in the ancient times were good at melee combat, but with the reduction of body-refining monks, the mainstream fighting methods in the world of immortals today are all remote control of magic weapons, and few monks go up to fight directly with each other. Obviously, the Taoist in white caught Chen Daoxian by surprise. But he reacted extremely quickly, and at the moment when the white-clothed Taoist rushed towards him, Chen Daoxian turned into a sword light and fled quickly. At the same time, he used his divine sense to control the flying sword to attack the Taoist man in white to hinder the opponent's speed. However, under the distraction, his escaping speed was inevitably reduced. And the 2 flying swords he used to block the Taoist man in white were easily pushed aside by the other party. Immediately afterwards, the Taoist man in white was shaped like a swimming fish, and passed through the gap where the 2 flying swords attacked. His flying swords did not play a role in hindering the enemy at all. So fast. Chen Daoxian's pupils shrank. The next moment, the sharp point of the sword touched his neck. The incarnation of the sword light brought by the incarnation of the sword light did not confuse the opponent even for a moment. Chen Daoxian was not surprised by this result. The evasion technique of transforming into a sword light was originally meant to only bully those monks with weak spiritual consciousness who did not practice the secret technique of spiritual eyes. Since the Taoist in white in front of him has the same cultivation base as him, he thinks that his consciousness is exactly the same as his. For a monk of this level, the incarnation of the sword light can't confuse the opponent at all. Seeing this scene, Chen Daoxian said with a sullen expression, "I lost." He did not expect that this time the trial was no longer about continuing to learn sword techniques and comprehending sword intent, but actual combat. And, he also lost a mess. This fight is slow and fast. In general, apart from taking the lead in attacking the opponent with 2 swords with flying swords at the beginning, Chen Daoxian was defeated only for a split second. If the Taoist in white hadn't kept his hand, Chen Daoxian would have been crushed by the opponent's immortal sword in an instant. This gap is no longer a little bit, but a difference between heaven and earth. Even if both sides have the same cultivation base, realm, and magic weapon, their combat skills and experience are vastly different. So much so that he was almost killed by the opponent. The Taoist in white glanced at Chen Daoxian, took back the immortal sword that was also of the 3rd rank middle grade on Chen Daoxian's neck, and said, "Your trial this time will be killed by me within 3 days. What? Chen Daoxian seemed to suspect that he had heard it wrong, and looked at the other party blankly. The Taoist man in white frowned slightly and repeated, "Your trial this time will be killed by me within 3 days. But, what's the difference between this and now?" Chen Daoxian glanced at the immortal sword in the hands of the white-clothed Taoist, and said depressedly, "Of course there is a difference. Being able to be killed by me proves that you have forced me to be unable to keep my hand. Now, you are still far behind." Hearing this explanation, Chen Daoxian felt even more depressed. He cupped his hands and said, "Dare to ask the seniors, if you are killed by me within 3 days, what will you do? Hear this." The mouth of the Taoist man in white without waves and gouging raised slightly, and said, "Let's talk about it when you do it." Chen Daoxian pursed his lips and stopped talking. Next moment, the two sides have a tacit understanding, holding the fairy sword and rushing towards the other side. This time, Chen Daoxian simply did not control the flying sword remotely. Facts have proved that it is useless to control the flying sword to deal with the Taoist in white. Although Fei Jian is under the control of divine consciousness, it basically reads the sword, but the other party seems to be more exaggerated, and can achieve the level of predicting the enemy's opportunities. Moreover, there is a disadvantage of remote control of Fei Jian, that is, it cannot exert the strength of body training. The Taoist man in white is a combination of qi and body cultivation, while Chen Daoxian just uses his true essence to compete with the opponent, and he has lost a hand in the innate. You know, under the premise that the two are the same in all aspects, this slight gap is enough to determine the outcome. Not to mention that the swordsmanship of this Taoist man in white is so strong that Chen Daoxian curses his mother. You lose. This time, Chen Daoxian lost faster. He realized that the remote control of Fei Jian could not win the opponent at all, so he also learned from the opponent and changed it into melee combat. But this time, the other party only used one sword, and simultaneously swung the two immortal swords from his left and right hands, directly taking Chen Daoxian's eyebrows. A drop of cold sweat fell from Chen Daoxian's forehead. With 30 times his comprehension, his sea of consciousness replayed the sword just now, but he never got anything. The remote control Fei Jian can also attack 4 swords, and the melee combat is only 1 sword. Moreover, looking at the relaxed appearance of the white-clothed Taoist, the other party obviously still has a lot of room to spare. Otherwise, the opponent will kill Chen Daoxian instead of defeating him easily. Being able to defeat without killing proves that the white-clothed Taoist and him are able to fight with ease. Come again. The next moment, another sword. Come again. The sword light flashed, the same posture. Continue. After failing again and again, Chen Daoxian's stubbornness was thoroughly inspired. Every time he failed, he continued to deduce in the sea of knowledge, looking for the flaws of the white-clothed Taoist. Gradually, he seemed to grasp something. The sword has also become a little different. Seeing the change of Chen Daoxian, the Taoist man in white nodded his head calmly and pointed. Remote control of the flying sword is the combination of spirit, and melee combat is the unity of spirit, and spirit. If you can achieve the unity of spirit, energy and spirit, you can read the sword, you can control the flying sword, but you can't do it with your hands? Hear this. Chen Daoxian suddenly realized. Thank you, senior, for your pointer. Next, Chen Daoxian's swordsmanship style changed greatly, and the immortal sword, which was erratic and eager, immediately became calm. This time, Chen Daoxian supported a full 4 swords, which was equal to the sword move he supported when he remotely controlled the flying sword. Come again. Chen Daoxian's eyes were bright and he laughed. With the passage of time, Chen Daoxian supported more and more in the hands of the Taoist man in white. It only took half a day before and after, from the original 1 sword to the later 4 swords, 5 swords, and then 10 swords. But after 10 swords, Chen Daoxian seemed to be stuck in a bottleneck, and he couldn't hold on to the 10th sword. The Taoist in white said the unity of spirit, energy and spirit. When he read the sword, he was able to do it. Speak up. Chen Daoxian had practiced swordsmanship for a period of time before he stepped into the path of immortality. It's just that the mundane swordsmanship can't be compared with the present. In the eyes of ordinary warriors, the battle between Chen Daoxian and the white-robed Taoist was simply a battle of gods, and they didn't even have the qualifications to watch it. The ordinary melee swordsmanship that Chen Daoxian learned was naturally useless. Read to the sword. This is already impossible in ordinary people, not to mention that Chen Daoxian's consciousness is many times faster than that of ordinary martial artists. But this level of swordsmanship is obviously not enough. After failing again and again, even with the blessing of 30 times his comprehension, Chen Daoxian's Taoism gradually became impetuous. No one can accept failure over and over again. Chen Daoxian is no exception. Especially this kind of failure seems to be indistinguishable, every time it is 10 swords to lose. But in the eyes of the Taoist man in white, the scene he saw was completely different. Although Chen Daoxian still loses every 10 swords, defeat is not the same as defeat. At the beginning, his 10 swords were relaxed and casual, but slowly, the relaxed and casual look on his face disappeared, replaced by a solemn and serious look. In other words, Chen Daoxian's swordsmanship is improving. But he didn't know it himself. Finally, a day later, the Taoist in white spoke again. Reading the sword is only the most basic realm of swordsmanship. Any cultivator who has just stepped into the fairyland can do it. You can do this in melee combat, which proves that you can no longer use the fairy sword in close combat. It is weaker than the remote control Feijian, but it is far from enough to achieve this level. He paused. The next step is to expect the enemy to take the lead. Before the enemy's attack arrives, you will know the position and reality of the attack. The deeper the realm of predicting the enemy's lead, the greater the advantage you have against the opponent. Let the enemy take the lead. Chen Daoxian secretly guessed the meaning of the other party's words. It's just a single sentence that predicts the enemy to take the lead. It's too general, and Chen Daoxian doesn't understand the true meaning of this sentence at all. But after the white-robed Taoist finished his instructions, he didn't intend to explain further, but just dragged Chen Daoxian to fight again and again. Fortunately, both of them are cultivators, so it doesn't matter if they fight for a few months or even a year. Time passed little by little. 2 days later. With repeated failures, Chen Daoxian finally found something different. In the sea of knowledge, he could clearly see every sword that the Taoist man in white was about to attack him. After seeing this scene, the pressure on Chen Daoxian suddenly disappeared. When you read God's arrival, expect the enemy to take the lead. When the two were combined, the time Chen Daoxian supported under the Taoist man in white skyrocketed. 100 swords, 300 swords, 500 swords. In the end, as Chen Daoxian's realm of predicting the enemy's opportunities became more and more profound, he found that he could actually fight back and forth with the white-robed Taoist man in front of him, and he was not inferior to the opponent at all. On the field, the two groups of sword lights collided wildly, the air was cut open, and even the space around the two of them rippled. The two fought from the sky to the ground, and then flew from the ground to the sky. The two sometimes separated, controlled the flying sword remotely to attack, and sometimes flew together, fighting in close quarters. The stones on the dojo are affected by any sword energy, leaving a bottomless dent. Fortunately, this is the space of consciousness. No matter how the two fight, the damage will be recovered afterwards. Otherwise, the dojo would have long since become a pile of ruins after fighting for so long. The more Chen Daoxian fought, the better his mood was, and the expression of the Taoist in white became more and more serious. As Chen Daoxian became more and more proficient at Jiandao and expected the enemy to take the lead, he found that as long as the enemy's attack did not exceed his tolerance limit, he could block it. And the Taoist in white's cultivation base, realm, and magic weapon are exactly the same as him. In theory, the other party can't take him at all. Boom! The two collided again, and then flew apart, volleying against each other. Looking at Chen Daoxian in front of him, the Taoist in white finally showed a hint of satisfaction in his eyes, and said, "You have passed the test." Hearing the words, Chen Daoxian's expression brightened. In the past 3 days, the ghost knows how many times he has been abused by this Taoist man in white. Every time he was defeated by a few swords, no more than 10 swords at most. Obviously, the two have the same cultivation level, the same realm, and the same magic weapon. It stands to reason that this situation is impossible, but Chen Daoxian can't beat the other party. Especially close combat. The melee strength of the white-robed Taoist was terrifying, completely subverting Chen Daoxian's worldview. Although he knew that with the blessing of body training, the cultivator would not be too weak in melee combat, but he did not expect it to be so strong. After all, in his original opinion, no matter how powerful a cultivator is in close combat, can it be compared to a flying sword controlled by divine sense? You must know that Fei Jian is controlled by divine consciousness, and it is naturally in the realm of reading the sword. As for melee combat, if the physical body, true essence, and spiritual consciousness cannot be completely unified, it simply cannot reach the level of reading the sword. In this way, even if the cultivator's melee attack upper limit is higher, it is difficult to tell whether it can match the long-range attack. Chen Daoxian originally tended to be invincible, because in his opinion, his melee attack limit is 60, and his long-range attack limit is 55, but his consciousness is much faster and more flexible than his hands. How is it possible to beat the distance in melee combat? But the Taoist man in white completely overturned his cognition. The other party told him with iron-like facts that the divine sense is not necessarily faster than the hand, and even faster than the divine sense. On a brand new arena, the icy gaze of the white-robed Taoist softened a bit, and then returned to icy cold again. He waved. A figure identical to Chen Daoxian himself appeared beside him. "This is you 3 days ago." The Taoist man in white pointed to Chen Daoxian beside him and said, "Now let's see how far you are from your original self." Chen Daoxian nodded impatiently. The Taoist man in white stepped aside. The transformed Chen Daoxian was the same as him 3 days ago, and it was attacked by 2 stars. For this kind of attack, Chen Daoxian, who was holding a sword in both hands, looked very calm. Clang! 2 crisp roars. The 2 stars returned to the original appearance of Feishue and Qingying Erjian, and flew out backwards. Chen Daoxian himself took it easy and walked towards the phantom body, in the distance step by step. Seeing this scene, a trace of panic flashed on the face of the transformed Chen Daoxian, but he was quickly suppressed by the other party. He controlled the flying sword again and attacked Chen Daoxian. This time, Fei Jian was rippling with a layer of faint ripples. Obviously, the other party had already used the space sword intent. But Chen Daoxian still has 2 extremely accurate swords, the flying sword that was attacked by flying. Full of loopholes, too weak. Chen Daoxian shook his head. Next moment, with a flash of light, he flew towards the phantom body standing in the sky. Just like him 3 days ago, the other party immediately thought of escaping and blocked Chen Daoxian with a flying sword. Chen Daoxian waved his right hand, and the flying sword was precisely slashed by him again, as if the flying sword of the phantom body took the initiative to hit his fairy sword. Not only that, Chen Daoxian even used the attack of the flying sword, and the speed of the light suddenly jumped up. And the illusion of the body is distracted to control the flying sword, and the speed of the light is weak, and in an instant, Chen Daoxian catches up. Brush! In the sky, a sword light flashed. The phantom body was annihilated by Chen Daoxian's immortal sword and turned into powder. With Chen Daoxian's attack strength as high as 60, the flesh and blood derived from the 4-layered body could not resist at all. Fly back! On the dojo, the Taoist man in white saw Chen Daoxian turning back, nodded and said, "This is your progress in the past 3 days. Thank you for your kindness, senior." Chen Daoxian bowed his body and said sincerely. He finally knew that he was so weak in the past. It is said that after reaching the 3rd level of sword intent, a cultivator is qualified to create his own sword art, but Chen Daoxian felt that if his original sword skills were at this level, he would have been able to create his own sword art by combining the realm of swordsmanship. At that time, his strength will inevitably skyrocket again. Jian Shou created a sword technique by himself, which means that he can 100% exert the strength of this realm. You must know that no matter what kind of sword intent, under the same realm, there is actually no difference in the power bonus. There is no such thing as a 7-fold bonus for the double-layer Silk Rain sword intent, but the space sword intent that has just reached the 1st layer has a 3-fold bonus. That's why. It's because the monks can't exert the strength that the swordsman realm should have. Take an inappropriate example. Comprehending sword intent is like discovering a path. Compared with the main sword intent, the difference between the branch sword intent and the main sword intent is different in the length limit of the road. But the sword intent of the same realm has exactly the same length. The reason for the different power bonuses is that the newly comprehended sword intent is like a newly discovered road, but it is not complete, but blocked and incomplete. The self-created sword art is to remove all the blockages on this road and repair all the defects until it is completely used by oneself. In other words, Chindaoxuan's second-level Silk Rain sword intent has a great degree of road blockage and incompleteness, while the first-level Space sword intent is much less blocked and incomplete. This is also the fundamental reason why the two are obviously one level apart, but the power bonus of Siyu sword intent is not as good as that of Space sword intent. Once Chen Daoxian created his own sword art based on these two sword intents, it meant that he renovated the two paths and completely used the two sword intents for his own use. At that time, the power bonus of Siyu Jianyi will inevitably skyrocket. This is also the reason why Zhou Mabai's ranking on the Zifu Tianjiao list skyrocketed after he created his own sword art. Normally, sword cultivators can only do this when they reach the third-level sword intent. Because generally only in this state, the accumulation of sword cultivators is enough for him to create his own sword art. The 19,769 testers, congratulations on passing this test. Before Chen Daoxian could react, the Taoist in white once again pointed to Chen Daoxuan's eyebrows. Suddenly, countless information poured into Chen Daoxuan's sea of consciousness. As this information poured into the sea of consciousness, Chen Daoxian only felt a splitting headache hit him. The last time I felt this way was when he accepted the inheritance of Ding's soul divine light. Chapter 242, A Long Time. This feeling of pain penetrating into the soul subsided like a tide. Different from the outside world, this place of inheritance of consciousness seems to be able to actively protect the sea of consciousness of the tester. With the recovery of consciousness, Chen Daoxian couldn't care about other things, and immediately checked the information in the sea of consciousness. An incense stick of time. With the blessing of 30 times his comprehension, he completely comprehended the information in the sea of consciousness. The Taoist in white just passed on to him a new magical power. Strictly speaking, magical powers are different from exercises and spells. They are more like a combination of exercises and spells. For example, the only magical power that Chen Daoxian mastered, Ding's soul divine light, is like this. This magical power can not only expand the sea of consciousness, improve the strength of the consciousness, but also has a matching soul-fixing divine light, which can attack the enemy's consciousness. Moreover, compared with exercises and spells, the potential of supernatural powers is great. Unlike exercises and spells, each has its own limit. Even if it is as strong as the Chenyuan Sword Sutra that Chen Daoxian majored in, it is only a practice that can be practiced up to the true immortals of Mahayana. Compared with exercises, spells are even more so, which can be seen from the rank of spells. Unless the monks can embark on the road of magic from the pure magic practice, they can get rid of the shackles. It's like a sword cultivator who comprehends sword intent from the cultivation of various sword tactics. The magic is completely different. No matter what kind of magical powers, even if the cultivation level is only a cultivator in the chi refining stage, as long as he can get started, he is qualified to continue his cultivation. Moreover, supernatural powers often accompany the monks throughout their cultivation career, and their power will continue to become stronger as the monks master the supernatural powers more and more deeply. For example, Ding's soul divine light is a magical power with infinite power in theory. Because the sea of consciousness has no limits, the sea of divine light naturally has no limits. Of course, theory is theory. In fact, the spiritual soul of a monk is subject to the physical body and real energy, and it is impossible to improve infinitely. For example, after Chen Daoxian expanded the sea of divine light to a radius of 120 miles, he felt that it was difficult to continue to expand. He knew that this was restricted by his cultivation. In fact, not only the magical power will be restricted by the cultivation base, but the realm, and even the rank of the magic weapon that the monk can use, will also be restricted by the cultivation base. Therefore, cultivation is the foundation of a monk. 3 heads and 6 arms. After Chen Daoxian read the contents of the magical powers in the Sea of Knowledge, he looked at the Taoist in white with strange eyes. However, the Taoist in white said in a cold tone, "When will this magical power be introduced to the practice, and when will you come to accept the next trial?" After speaking, the white-robed Taoist waved his hand. Chen Daoxian only felt his vision dimmed, and then his consciousness returned to his body. Demon Mountain. In a cave. Chen Daoxian, who was sitting on the Wenyu futon, suddenly opened his eyes. He himself withdrew from the epiphany state. Call. Looking at the familiar practice room in front of him, Chen Daoxian let out a sigh of relief. The time of his trial this time was much longer than the last trial, reaching 3 days. Compared with this, the better news is that his identity as a tester seems to be completely confirmed. In the past, the divine pattern between his eyebrows only meant that he could accept 2 trials. And this time, he touched the center of his eyebrows, and the divine pattern that symbolized the 2 trials disappeared, replaced by a brand new divine pattern. This kind of divine pattern is different from the divine pattern of Yi Wudao that Chen Daoxian had seen before, and the divine pattern of the Jiang family Tianjiao he met in Yuanshan Xiancheng. This is a new pattern. After careful experience, Chen Daoxian understood the meaning of this new divine pattern. From today onwards, he will become the official tester of this inheritance, with unlimited opportunities for trials. Hearing this news, Chen Daoxian's tense heart suddenly relaxed. He has been running back and forth for so long, and he is sacrificing and refining his avatar, and he is also going to the real demon world to secretly kill the world monster to obtain the Jiyuanzu, just for this inheritance. Although he has not fully obtained this inheritance yet, with this infinite trial, it is almost a certainty that he will finally get this inheritance. Chen Daoxian didn't believe that with his understanding of the Hongmeng Enlightenment Classic, he would not be able to pass the next trial. Even if 30 times the comprehension is not enough, what about the higher comprehension? You must know that the Hongmeng Enlightenment Classic can be improved. Strictly speaking, Chen Daoxian's Hongmeng Enlightenment Classic is only at the 2nd level. Who knows how strong the Hongmeng Enlightenment Classic on the 3rd floor is? Thinking of it this way, Chen Daoxian was not in a hurry at all. He silently took out a jade slip from the storage bag. This jade slip is a body-refining magical power that his clone obtained from the Yuan dynasty in the real demon world, called Fa Tiangxiangdi. This supernatural power is the supernatural power that Chen Daoxian saw when he went to the Great Yuan dynasty to watch the monster slashing event, and the bodies of the body-refining cultivators grew bigger. This time, his clone took the opportunity to go to the real demon world, and took the opportunity to get this magical power back. Although the human race of the real demon world is kept in captivity by the demons, it is not without merit. At least they also have a certain uniqueness in the cultivation of the body. Just like this magical power of Fa Tiangxiangdi. In addition to making the cultivator's body bigger when it is used, there is also a fundamental change, which is to enhance the cultivator's basic physical strength. For example, with Chen Daoxian's current cultivation base derived from flesh and blood, his physical strength is only 2. After cultivating the magical powers of Dharma image, his physical strength can be doubled. Of course, this improvement also has a limit, that is, it will not exceed 3 times the limit power of the 9th layer cultivator derived from flesh and blood. If Chen Daoxian's estimation is correct, this state is the same as the limit state true essence of a foundation-building cultivator. That is to say, a body-refining cultivator with a cultivation base derived from flesh and blood, the limit of his physical strength is at most 10. Exceeding this limit means that the body-refining cultivator has broken through to the next realm. Before Chen Daoxian was busy participating in the trial, he did not care about dealing with this magical power. The reason why he thought of this magical power now is because the attacking magical power he had just obtained from the Taoist man in white 3 heads and 6 arms, is also a magical power of Dharma imagery. It's just that the magical power of 3 heads and 6 arms not only increases the cultivator's physical strength, but also enhances the cultivator's attack speed and spiritual response speed by increasing the cultivator's arms and head. In fact, Chen Daoxian also felt this when he was in close combat. There was a huge difference in strength between one-handed swords and two-handed swords. Although he can also read the sword with one hand, the limit of the sword is much lower. In other words, when holding the sword with one hand, Chen Daoxuan's sword attack speed is twice as slow as that with two hands. For the flesh and blood-derived body refining cultivator, there is no difference between left and right hands, but the difference between one-handed and two-handed is big. Not to mention the improvement of the cultivator's strength with 3 heads and 6 arms. Compared with the magical powers he obtained in his clone, 3 heads and 6 arms is undoubtedly an enhanced version of the magical powers. The cultivation of Fa Tiangxiangdi requires a lot of blood crystals. Presumably, the cultivation of 3 heads and 6 arms will only consume more blood crystals. Chen Daoxian said silently. Although he got a lot of blood crystals from the real demon world, the looting of his clone has alarmed the demon master of the real demon world. The next time he wants to play like this, it will be much more dangerous. This is different from the real god in those days. There were only a few nascent soul true monarchs who arrested Xinjue Zhenren back then, and Xinjue Zhenren's own cultivation had reached the late stage of Jindan. However, Chen Daoxuan's avatar was only at the foundation stage, and the strength gap between it and the real person Xinjue was too great, and it was impossible to be as arrogant as the other party. Unless he is willing to give up his clone to give it a try. It's just that Chen Daoxian doesn't want to give up the avatar. After all, there are very few opportunities for the avatar to be sacrificed. Even if he can be promoted to the Yuanshan stage in the future, he can only add one more avatar. Moreover, the cultivator's clone died one less, and it was impossible to increase it. How could Chen Daoxian do such a self-destructive thing? Blood crystal. Chen Daoxian immediately thought of Evernight Immortal City, where there seemed to be a lot of blood crystals. The passage to the true demon realm in the immortal city of Evernight is definitely much wider than the passage in front of him. For so many years, the Jiang family in Taizhou and the Chenyuan sword sect must have developed the territory opposite the passage to a very mature level. This can be seen from the stable blood crystal output in Taizhou. Maybe my Chen family can try to establish a trade relationship with the Jiang family in the future. Chen Daoxian thought deeply. He shook his head, throwing the chaotic thoughts out of his mind. Chen Daoxian calmed down and began to practice the magical power of 3 heads and 6 arms. 3 heads and 6 arms is different from Ding's soul divine light, it is actually hierarchical. Chen Daoxian frowned. The stratification of 3 heads and 6 arms is judged by the height of the Dharma image. A height of 100 feet is considered the first floor, and then, every time the height increases by 100 feet, it is considered to enter the next floor. Back then, the Qingzhou sword saint he saw in Qin Yanghe of the Yuan dynasty was an exaggerated 30 feet tall. Come to think of it, the other party is on the 3rd layer of the magical power of the law. Inside the cave, Chen Daoxian was naked. Beside him, 10 blood crystals were quietly suspended. Next moment, Chen Daoxian opened his eyes, and 10 blood crystals rushed towards his body. Then, these blood crystals merged into his body one by one. Only this time, instead of running the dragon python swallowing heaven technique, he started the training method of 3 heads and 6 arms. Under the blessing of 30 times understanding. His understanding of this magical power is extremely thorough, and every detail is accurate, plus one after another blood crystals serve as the resources for tempering the flesh. Chen Daoxuan's jade-like skin began to crack quickly, and under the cracked skin, dark red muscles and fascia were exposed. But soon, the cracked skin was repaired, and the exposed dark red muscles were covered again. At this moment, if there are outsiders present, they will find that Chen Daoxuan's height has actually increased by 3 inches during this process. At the same time, a severe pain hit Chen Daoxian. This pain was not only caused by the change in height, but the deeper reason was the reorganization and enhancement of his inner flesh and blood. No wonder the cultivation of 3 heads and 6 arms requires a cultivation base derived from flesh and blood. If you don't reach the cultivation base derived from flesh and blood, even a foundation-building cultivator can't take the damage from this round. Chen Daoxian said silently. Next. The practice of 3 heads and 6 arms becomes simple and repetitive, absorbing the special energy in the blood crystal, operating the method, and increasing the height. Of course, the increase in height is only an appearance. The deeper change is that his physical body is strengthening a little bit. In addition to the physical strength, this enhancement also includes the physical bodhi's resilience, defense, and so on. Soon, the energy of 10 blood crystals was consumed. At this time, Chen Daoxian discovered that his height had actually doubled, and the whole person had become a little giant. It's only 10 feet tall to be considered entry-level. I'm only more than 10 feet tall now, and am still far behind. After secretly estimating, Chen Daoxian continued to devour and refine blood crystals. However, with the growth of height, the consumption of blood crystals becomes more and more terrifying. At the beginning, it only took more than 20 blood crystals to increase the height by 1 zhang. When the height was 9 zhang, 10 blood crystals were needed for each additional foot. After careful calculation, it takes a total of more than 500 blood crystals to cultivate to the first floor of Shizhang. According to the market price of a blood crystal of 100,000 spirit stones, Chen Daoxian only started the practice of 3 heads and 6 arms. No, strictly speaking, he has not yet started. Because the magical power of 3 heads and 6 arms can grow another 2 heads and 4 arms after the body refiner reaches a height of 10 feet. This is a big project. According to the description in the magical power of 3 heads and 6 arms, it needs to consume twice as much resources as before. In this way, Chen Daoxian needs to spend more than 100 million spiritual stones just to start the cultivation of this magical power. Of course, purchasing resources like blood crystals with spirit stones is a huge loss, but there is no way. Who made the resources like blood crystals unique to the real demon world? A month later. 10 feet. Outside the cave. Chen Daoxian, wearing a spirit armor, stretched out a palm the size of a door face, and was filled with emotion. He lowered his head and looked at the normal-size object in his eyes. But now, these objects are all miniatures. Under the control of Chen Daoxian Jinyuan, a storage bag flew to his left palm. Chen Daoxian carefully twisted the mini storage bag in his left hand with 2 fingers, and with a movement of consciousness, more than 500 blood crystals appeared in front of him. At this moment, the blood crystals that were originally the size of fists also became the size of rice grains in his eyes. Seeing these blood-red rice grains, Chen Daoxian opened his mouth to suck, and blood crystals poured into his huge mouth. Next second, an explosion-like burning sensation hit, and then, his body was directly torn apart. Where the body was torn, countless granulation buds repaired frantically, trying to restore the body. See. Chen Daoxian did not dare to neglect, and started the most crucial method of magical powers, 3 heads and 6 arms. I saw his body began to swell. As the body swelled, a blood-red arm broke out from his arm. On the blood-red arm, the jade-like skin quickly closed, wrapping the blood-red muscles. Next, the second, third, and fourth arms grew out one after another. At this time, Chen Daoxian's body has become a little deformed. But the next moment, the real horror came. I saw that a head broke out from his back shoulder and suddenly grew out, followed by a second. The 2 newborn heads are exactly the same as Chen Daoxian's head, and the back of their heads are close together. At this time, his natal spiritual armor also began to change. The natal spiritual armor that originally covered the whole body was transformed into a light armor again, covering his newly grown 4 arms and 2 heads. So far, Chen Daoxian was considered to have completely introduced the magical power of 3 heads and 6 arms. Chapter 243. Inheritance Trial Space. On the field, Chen Daoxian and the Taoist in white confronted each other in the air. Chen Daoxian's eyes were solemn, and he cupped his hands at the Taoist in white. "Senior, please advise." Say it. I saw a change in his body, and 2 heads and 4 arms suddenly appeared. 3 heads and 6 arms. It's just different from when he practiced in reality. His height didn't change in any way, just 2 more heads and 4 arms. This is also one of the characteristics of the 3 heads and 6 arms after the entrance of the attacking supernatural powers. It is possible to use 3 heads and 6 arms without casting a Dharma image. Of course, if you don't cast the Dharma image, there will be no increase in the basic physical strength. This state can only be regarded as a normal state during competition. If you work hard, you will naturally have to cast Dharma images. Seeing Chen Daoxian displaying 3 heads and 6 arms, the Taoist man in white was still single sword, exactly the same as before. From Chen Daoxian's point of view, the actual combat level of the white-clothed Taoist is far beyond his imagination. Even if he realizes the opportunity to read the sword and predict the enemy, he is far from being the opponent of the white-clothed Taoist. Of the 6 arms, 2 of them held Feishue and Qingying swords. The other 4 hands were holding the Qi sword transformed by true essence. In terms of power, it was naturally far inferior to the 2 hands holding Feishue and Qingying. See this scene. The Taoist man in white frowned slightly, he waved his hand, and 4 third-order high-grade immortal swords flew towards Chen Daoxian. Chen Daoxian caught the immortal sword and quickly thanked him. "Thank you, senior." "No, these are not true." Chen Daoxian nodded, his body moved, and he rushed towards the other side. It has to be said that the 3-headed 6-armed battle is very different from the previous 2-armed battle. So Chen Daoxian felt a bit of discomfort at the beginning of the battle. If the Sea of Knowledge had not always anticipated the attack of the white-clothed Taoist, he could hardly have reacted. "I didn't expect to be able to read the sword with 2 arms, but I can't do it with 3 heads and 6 arms." Chen Daoxian secretly said, "If I don't have seniors to accompany me, I will directly use my 3 heads and 6 arms to fight against people in the future, and I might suffer a big loss." While secretly vigilant in his heart, Chen Daoxian's sword was getting faster and faster. Obviously, his adaptation to the body of 3 heads and 6 arms is getting higher and higher. This magical power of 3 heads and 6 arms only increases the upper limit of the monk's attack speed and the speed of the reaction of the consciousness, but the upper limit is the upper limit. Whether the strength can be exerted to the upper limit of the body depends on the monk himself. It's like some cultivators have clearly reached the foundation building stage, but they study alchemy all day long, and they don't know how to fight at all. This kind of cultivator can only bully the chi-refining cultivator who is lower than him at most, and any foundation-building cultivator can defeat him. This is the performance of not being able to exert one's own strength. This situation is also reflected in the body-refining cultivator. Most of the cultivators are proficient in melee combat, and Chen Daoxian, as a cultivator who is new to body training, is not good at melee combat. If it weren't for the teachings of the white-clothed Taoist, plus the help of 30 times his comprehension, he would not be able to exert his due strength in close combat. At this moment, he suddenly grew 3 heads and 6 arms, as if he had changed his body anew. It is nonsense to be able to play the original melee level. Clang clang clang. In midair, the immortal swords collided and made a violent roar. Among them, the larger group of sword lights is the figure of Chen Daoxian, and the sword light of the Taoist in white is much smaller. Obviously, Chen Daoxian has suppressed the Taoist in white, and can swallow the opponent's sword light at any time. As the mastery of this body became more and more proficient, Chen Daoxian felt that in the state of 3 heads and 6 arms, he still had more potential to play, so Jianguang became more and more anxious. Although the sea of consciousness of the Taoist in white can reflect every attack of Chen Daoxian has 6 arms, and the speed of the sword is so fast that even if his consciousness reacts, he can't resist it. Good. The Taoist man in white smiled slightly. In the next moment, he suddenly retreated, and his figure changed drastically. The Taoist in white also appeared in front of Chen Daoxian with a pair of 3 heads and 6 arms. This time, the cultivation base, realm, and magical power of the two seemed to be equal again. Boom! The two collided again. In the sky. The two groups of sword lights flickered violently, setting off the cloudless sky darkened, as if the of heaven was angry. Happy! Happy! The figures of the two separated again, and Chen Daoxian shouted loudly. The Taoist man in white smiled, "This is how cultivators fight. The way you looked before is the wrong way." Hearing this, Chen Daoxian, who had experience with this, nodded, "Senior is right. This magical power of 3 heads and 6 arms not only increases the cultivator's attack speed and the upper limit of the reaction of consciousness, but also the upper limit of the attack." Chen Daoxian was stunned. "Raise the attack limit? You look good." After that, the 6 arms of the Taoist in white swung the sword at the same time, and finally, the 6 arms seemed to merge into one. Not only that, the 6 sword lights also merged into one. 6-armed strike. The Taoist in white shouted loudly, and saw the sword light of the 6 paths merged into one, directly drawing a violent ripple in the space in front of him. Although he used the space sword intent with this sword, even though the space intensity of the trial space is not high, it can cause such a big fluctuation in the space, not to mention that the cultivator of the foundation can't do it, even the cultivator of the purple house can do it. Very few. The biggest effect of the 3 heads and 6 arms is that each arm can exert all the power of the original body, and under the combined attack of the 6 arms, it can even explode 6 times the original attack. It's just that if you want to integrate the 6-armed attack into one, you need to take the control of this body to a higher level. This is the content of your trial. The Taoist man in white explained. Hear this. While Chen Daoxian was shocked, he silently calculated in his heart that with his body refining and qi refining, his basic strength is now about 12. After using the Dharma image, his physical strength will roughly double, which is 14. In addition to the 4 times the Kendo realm and the magic weapon, his maximum attack strength reached 70, which was 10 points higher than the original 60. But if you learn this 6-armed attack, the increase will be terrifying. 6 times of 70 is 420, and in an instant, he was promoted from the strength level of an ordinary Zifu cultivator to a leader among the Zifu cultivators. You know, according to Chen Daoxian's estimation, even Zhou Mubai, who is on the Zifu Tianjiao list, has an attack limit of only about 700. Of course, this was Zhou Mubai's strength before he created his own sword art. After Zhou Mubai created his own sword art, Chen Daoxian had no idea what his strength was. But even if Zhou Mubai didn't create his own sword art, his strength was far greater than that of ordinary cultivators in the later period of Zifu. And the attack limit does not represent the cultivator's true strength. It can only reflect the cultivator's ultimate attack power. The specific strength depends on the actual battle. It does not necessarily mean that a cultivator who attacks with 420 power is necessarily weaker than a cultivator who attacks with more than 700 power. Cultivators with an attack power of 420 and 700 were basically unable to withstand each other's attacks. You must know that Chen Daoxian has the magical power of calming the soul, and his real combat power is definitely much stronger than the upper limit of his attack power. The next days, under the guidance of the Taoist man in white, Chen Daoxian learned the skills of 6-armed strikes. The Taoist in white was right, the skill of 6-armed strike requires him to take control of his body to a higher level. If Chen Daoxian has been majoring in body training and melee combat, the difficulty may not be so great. But unfortunately, Chen Daoxian's focus on body training was only recently. Not to mention close combat. In Chen Daoxian's impression, the only close combat in his life seemed to be a sneak attack on a base-building alchemist who had lost his strength. In this way, Chen Daoxian has hardly ever fought in real melee combat, and all rely on remote control instruments to solve the battle. He never felt that there was anything wrong with doing this, after all, everyone fought like this. Like the Taoist man in white, who holds an immortal sword in his hand and fights with others in melee, is an anomaly. If it wasn't for the fact that the other party told him that the cultivator could be so powerful in melee combat, Chen Daoxian would not believe that the upper limit of melee combat was so high. Strictly speaking, what the Taoist man in white taught him was not melee combat, but to make up for his shortcomings. If Chen Daoxuan's flaws are what, he himself will definitely answer, lack of defense. In fact, the lack of defense is just an excuse. His real inadequacy is the lack of means to attack close behind. For example, if a flying sword hit him in front of him, in the past, Chen Daoxian must be in a hurry. But now, with just a single sword in his hand, he can knock the flying sword that was attacking his face into the air. In the true sense, attack is defense. There is no such thing as a lack of defense. 10 days later. On the dojo in the trial space. The key to the six-armed attack is the frequency of attacks. If you master the frequency of attacks, you can master this skill. The Taoist man in white pointed at the side. Chen Daoxian looked serious. He can now stack the attacks of 2 arms at will, but if he wanted to stack 6 arms, he tried for 10 days, but he still couldn't succeed. Because the 6 arms of the 3 heads and 6 arms are distributed in 3 different directions, if you want the 6 arms to strike together, you must make the body rotate regularly during the attack. How fast is Chen Daoxuan's sword? Almost the same speed as divine consciousness. With such a fast speed, it was extremely difficult to turn the arm behind him to the front and integrate the attack into the previous attack. This requires him to control the body of 3 heads and 6 arms to an extremely exaggerated level. With the blessing of 30 times his comprehension, Chen Daoxian practiced for 10 days, but he still could not grasp the trick. Or, he knew the trick, but his body couldn't. In the end, he still didn't have enough control over his body. Call. Chen Daoxian sighed and shook his head. Senior, send me out first, I think this skill needs to be practiced in reality. Hearing this, the Taoist man in white nodded. You are right, the skill of the 6-arm strike is not in the consciousness, but in the body itself, and the body must be able to respond faster than the consciousness. Even if you practice here, you won't be able to go out. Exit the trial space. Chen Daoxian opened his eyes. Looking at the closed-door practice room, Chen Daoxian walked out of the cave. Come to the flat dojo outside the cave. Chen Daoxian displayed 3 heads and 6 arms, and then took out 4 third-order low-grade flying swords from the storage bag, and continued to practice the skills of combining 6 arms. After practicing for a while, Chen Daoxian shook his head. As Daoist White Clothes said, no matter how well you learn in the trial space, in reality, it is still very jerky. It seems a little wasteful to use comprehension here. Thinking of this, Chen Daoxian simply quit the state of 30 times his comprehension. He already knew the technique of the 6-armed strike by heart, but he couldn't do it physically, and he couldn't help it either. The only way is to practice a lot. This is real hard work and there are no shortcuts. On the dojo outside the cave. A monk with 3 heads and 6 arms, wearing a spirit armor, swings his sword again and again. Gradually, the 2 sword lights merged into one, and Chen Daoxian finally caught up with the results of hard training in the trial space for several days. But next, the biggest bottleneck has come: how to make the arms on the side, or even behind, keep up with the attack in front of him. Spin attack. Chen Daoxian realized silently and practiced over and over again. In the end, he felt that the boring practice was ineffective, so he simply took out the ink wall and practiced by attacking the target. With Chen Daoxuan's current strength, there are not many things in this world that can be used as a target for him. The meteorite ink wall happens to be one of them. The meteorite ink gold is extremely strong, let alone him, the Yuaning cultivator can't move a bit. Not to mention that the meteorite ink wall also comes with a small cave that can absorb the aftermath of the attack. In addition to testing the cultivator's attack limit, it is the most suitable target. Looking at the dark wall in front of him, Chen Daoxian attacked it again. 59, 60, 58, 59, 59, 60. On the ink wall, a series of attack values appeared. Seeing these values, Chen Daoxian seemed to have found the problem. It stands to reason that the intensity of each of his attacks should be 60 now, and less than 60 proves that he does not have enough control over his body. Immediately, Chen Daoxian stopped attacking and thought to himself, the faster I swing the sword, the more unstable my attack will be, and even the attack will not be stable, let alone fuse all the attacks into one. Thinking of this, Chen Daoxian simply forgot about the fusion attack, and instead adjusted the attack strength of each sword. He first slowed down the attack speed, and sure enough, as the speed slowed down, the attack on the meteorite wall became more and more stable. It's all a series of 60s at the end. Seeing this, Chen Daoxian accelerated again, and the value suddenly became unstable again. Chen Daoxian slowed down his attack speed again. In this way, he increased the speed little by little, and whenever the attack strength was unstable, he immediately slowed down the attack speed. This kind of practice is boring, but it is much more efficient than swinging a sword without a target direction in the trial space. 5 months later, Chen Daoxian is now attacking at full speed, and he has been able to completely stabilize the attack strength at the level of 60. 60, 60, 60, 60. On the ink wall, a series of 60 appeared. Chen Daoxian's face was solemn. With the continuous practice these days, he has gradually learned the skill of the six-armed strike. That's what it feels like. Chen Daoxian's eyes flashed. The next moment, 6 sword lights attacked a point on the ink wall at the same time. Boom! The huge attack directly repelled the meteorite wall by 30 feet. On the meteorite ink wall, a circle of ripples flickered frantically like a streamer. 360. A striking value appeared in front of Chen Daoxian. Seeing this value, Chen Daoxian burst into ecstasy. After more than a year of retreat, his attack limit has reached the current 360 compared to 55 a year ago, an increase of more than 6 times. If you cast the Dharma image, the increase will even reach 8 times. Not to mention the improvement in his actual combat skills, Chen Daoxian's current strength is many times stronger than that of more than a year ago. Just as he was excitedly preparing to continue entering the trial space, the communication jade talisman in the storage bag suddenly flashed. Chapter 244, the next day. A large transport ship flew in the direction of Guang'an Prefecture. Small cave days for transport ships. A barracks stood. The Chen family's large transport ship has been temporarily transformed into a troop transport ship. Dressed in a dazzling spirit armor, the cultivator shuttled through the barracks. Chen Daoxian inspected and turned to a burly cultivator behind him, wearing a blue spirit armor, and said, "This new army has a good morale." Hearing this compliment, Lei Zhen with a rough face laughed and said, "This new army is an excellent soldier carefully selected from the Western Union Army under the command of the Lord." After the Battle of Tsangzhou Corpse Tide, even if the soldiers of the Western Union Army were placed on the front line of the Izumo Kingdom, they were considered a group of elite soldiers. The subordinates carefully selected 3,000 people from them to form a new army, and their morale was of course strong, heard. Chen Daoxian nodded, then looked at Chen Fusheng who was following him, and said, "Fusheng, you will hand over to General Lei later, and arrange my Chen family cultivator into this new army." When Chen Daoxian said this, he kept watching Lei Zhen's expression, and found that his face was no different, and nodded secretly in his heart. Although he had explained to Lei Zhen before, after this new army was selected, the Chen family cultivator would take over. But everyone has the problem of coveting power. Lei Zhen said at the time that there was no problem. Now that the new army has been reorganized, who knows if he will have an idea in his heart. The human heart is not something that can be restrained by relying on a mere oath. "Minister Chen, please give me more advice." "Don't dare." Seeing Lei Zhen bowing his hands to him, Chen Fusheng didn't dare to be arrogant and hurriedly returned the salute. Although Lei Zhen was a guest of the Chen family, the object of his allegiance was Chen Daoxian, not Chen Fusheng. Strictly speaking, both of them were subordinates of Chen Daoxian, and there was no difference in status. Of course. In fact, Chen Fusheng, as the most talented sword cultivator in the Qin Jiafu generation, was different from Lei Zhen, an outsider. Thunderbolt. Subordinates are here. Lei Zhen bowed to Chen Daoxian. Chen Daoxian tapped the storage bag on his waist, and a jade bottle appeared in the palm of his hand. He waved his hand, and the jade bottle automatically flew towards Lei Zhen. Lei Zhen took the jade bottle and said at a loss, "This." Chen Daoxian explained, "This is Zifu Dan." Hearing that the jade bottle in his hand was actually the Zifu Dan dreamed of by the Foundation establishment cultivator, Lei Zhen immediately flushed with excitement. "I promised you at the beginning that when you open up the Zifu in the future, my Chen family will sponsor you as a Fudan. Now that you have established the 9th floor of the Foundation, and you are only a line away from the completion of the Foundation, it is time to fulfill the promise of my Chen family. Hear this." Lei Zhen's heart was suddenly filled with the thought of Chen Daoxuan's liver and brain. He wanted to bow down to Chen Daoxian on the spot. Chen Daoxian held him up with one hand, patted his right hand, and said, "As long as you serve my Chen family faithfully, my Chen family will never treat you poor soldiers." Lei Zhen nodded, slightly choked up. As a loose cultivator who has served in Yunmengwen for many years, Lei Zhen knows how difficult it is to find a reliable master. When he was in Yunmeng Pass, it wasn't that he didn't understand the world at all. But most of Yunmengwen's circles are controlled by Jingzhou cultivators, and even if Lei Zhen wanted to merge, he couldn't get in. It is nothing new for Cangzhou cultivators to be ostracized by cultivators from other states on the battlefield of Izumo. Even Zhou Mubai, who was on the Zifu Tianjiao list, was rejected and hostile by monks from other states when he served on the front line of Izumo, let alone Lei Zhen, a loose cultivator with no foundation. This is also one of the reasons why Cangzhou cultivator hates Yi Wudao so much. The speed of the large transport ship is extremely fast. Although it is not as fast as Zhou's Spirit Void battleship, it is also much faster than the escape of ordinary Foundation establishment cultivators. After a few hours, Lingbei Island was already in sight. Since the Chen family arrived a day late, by the time Chen Daoxian arrived, many Cangzhou cultivators had already arrived. After the Battle of Cangzhou Corpse Tide ended, the Cangzhou Allied Forces were not disbanded. As a member of the Cangzhou Allied Forces, after hearing the call of the Qianyuan Sword Sect, everyone naturally gathered towards the Zhou family in Cangzhou. I have the experience of receiving monks from various palaces in Cangzhou last time. The reception work of the Zhou family is undoubtedly much more calm this time. Before the Chen family's troop carrier approached Lingbei Island, a Lingshu battleship greeted him in the sky. Compared with the large transport ships of the Chen family, the Spirit Void battleship, which used to be like a behemoth, is extraordinarily thin in front of the huge size of the large transport ships. Of course, although large transport ships are large in size, they have no combat effectiveness themselves. Compared with the Spirit Void battleship, there is still no comparison. Close to the Chen family large transport ship, a figure flew down from the Spirit Void battleship. Chen Daoxuan's consciousness swept away, and after seeing who was coming, he hurriedly flew out of the Chen family transport ship with a smile. "Uncle Zhou, long time no see, stay safe." It was none other than Zhou Mucheng, who retired from the Western Union Army after the Cangzhou Corpse Tide War. "Brother Zhou," Chen Daoxian pondered for a moment, and asked as he walked, "I don't know why the Qianyuan Jianzong recruited my Cangzhou cultivator this time. Is it just a matter of the passage of the real demon world in Taizhou?" Heard. Zhou Mubai frowned, and after coughing, he said, "I don't know exactly what the matter is, but as far as I know, there is a problem on the opposite side of the Taizhou passage." "Across the passage?" Chen Daoxian frowned. "Opposite the passage is the real demon world. During this time, Chen Daoxian has used his clone and Mi Chen Fan to make waves in the Great Yuan Kingdom of the True Demon Realm for many times. According to Chen Daoxuan's understanding, the real demon world is incomparably vast, and it is not inferior to this world at all. The Great Yuan Kingdom is just a trivial country in the real demon world. In terms of strength, it is far less powerful than Qianyuan Sword Sect. Otherwise, Chen Daoxian would not be able to make a strong wave on the opposite side with just his base-building avatar and Mi Chen Fan. Although the instrument of Mi Chen Fan claimed to be able to escape in the hands of the nascent soul cultivator, it was based on the premise that the nascent soul cultivator was caught off guard and unprepared. Once the nascent soul cultivator is ready, there are too many ways for the other party to disable me. Chen Fan's random teleportation function. This is also the reason why Chen Daoxian didn't dare to send clones after a few laps in Dayuan. Because the great demons and demon masters of the Great Yuan Kingdom are already prepared. If you wave again, you will be sent to death. The next 2 days. After the assembly on Lingbei Island, the Cangzhou cultivators rushed towards Taizhou. Taizhou and Cangzhou are quite far apart. Even if a large transport ship is used, it will take more than half a month to arrive. Headed on a spirit boat. Chen Daoxian said with emotion, no wonder Wan Xinghai has to rely on the immortal clan in each state to rule. This traffic is too inconvenient. Taizhou and Cangzhou are still 2 neighboring states, if it is the most distant 2 states. Chen Daoxian said and shook his head. Aside. The Taoist Huling with a flame pattern on his eyebrows smiled and said, Brother Chen, don't complain, we Cangzhou are pretty good, after all, it is relatively close to Qianyuan Sword Sect. If it is far away from Qianyuan Sword Sect state, that would be a mess. Oh? Chen Daoxian raised his brows and said, could it be that under Qianyuan Jianzong's rule, is there still such a chaotic place in Wan Xinghai? Of course. Taoist Huling seemed to be interested, otherwise, why do you think the old sect master of Qianyuan Sword Sect killed the Qi family? Cough cough. Seeing that Taoist Huling had no door on his mouth, Zhou Mubai hurriedly coughed. Dare to discuss the previous suzerain of Qianyuan Jianzong in public, that is, Huling Taoist has a deep background and has the courage. Change to someone else. Zhou Mubai shook his head. Seeing this, Chen Daoxian smiled and said, forget it, let's not talk about that. He paused, by the way, I want to ask for some 3rd-tier high-grade immortal swords. I don't know if you have stock in your hands. I am willing to buy them at high grade. Hear this. Zhou Mubai joked, last time, your Chen family snapped up so many Zifu pills at the Zhang family's auction house, and now you are buying the 3rd-tier high-grade immortal swords. It seems that your Chen family has really made a fortune. Hearing this, Chen Daoxian smiled bitterly and said, it's just a little extra money. Compared with your family, my Chen family is too shallow, and I can only refine some low-level medicinal elixirs and earn some spiritual stones. Henry Zhang didn't think much about it. He took out a dozen sword boxes from the storage bag at will, and said, these are the 3rd-order high-grade fairy swords in my private collection, with various attributes. Brother Chen picks a few that catch your eye. Bar. Seeing this scene, Chen Daoxian knew that this is the background of the big family. As the heir to the patriarch of the Zhang family in Jinan House, Henry Zhang can easily take out a dozen private collections of 3rd-order high-grade flying swords. You must know that these flying swords, in terms of the value of spirit stones alone, are already tens of millions of spirit stones. This shows the wealth of the immortal clan. When the Chen family was in downfall, the accumulation of several generations was only less than 10,000 spirit stones, and the two were simply worlds apart. Not to mention the loose cultivators who were worse than the Chen family back then. This is also the reason why Chen Daoxian felt hopeless after crossing into this world. The cultivator clan and the sect forces monopolized the cultivation resources too desperately. So much so that loose cultivators and small family cultivators don't even have the spiritual energy to practice. If it weren't for the fact that the main force of the Qianyuan Sword Sect was against the public opinion and divided the interests of the battlefield of Izumo to the loose cultivator would never be able to come forward. Chen Daoxian looked at the sword boxes floating in front of him and opened them one by one. As Henry Zhang said, the fairy swords he took out were all treasures that he kept private, and each one was inferior to the rainbow light sword that the Yang family gave him at the beginning. Chen Daoxian selected 3 water-type flying swords and 1 metal-type flying sword in succession and stopped. Just choose these 4 swords. Chen Daoxian smiled and handed over a high-end storage bag. This is a spirit stone. Henry Zhang waved his hand, took back the other 3rd-tier top-grade immortal swords, and took the storage bag handed over by Chen Daoxian. Immediately, his expression changed. He frowned, stretched out his hand and dragged the storage bag and said, Brother Chen, what does this mean? Last time I auctioned so many Zifu pills at your Zhang family auction house. The extra ones are my personal thank you. Zifu pill is not so easy to buy. As a strategic pill, any Zifu pill will be strictly controlled by the sect and the major immortals. Qin Daoxian was able to buy so many Zifu pills, and the Zhang family really helped the Qin family a lot. The Qin family must accept this favor. He bought the third-order high-grade fairy sword at a premium, as a thank-you gift to Henry Zhang, and it just showed that the Qin family remembered the favor of the Zhang family. Everyone present was human. Qin Daoxuan's attitude made everyone present have a very good impression of the newly rising family of the Qin family. You know, Cangzhou is different from Taizhou and Jingzhou. Taizhou and Jingzhou are dominated by one family, and other immortal cultivators have to look up to the Jiang family and the Ji family. And although the Cangzhou prefectures have the most powerful families, as far as the entire Cangzhou is concerned, there is no hegemonic force like Taizhou and Jingzhou. The former Yi family had a few chances. When Cangzhou experienced a sharp decline in strength after the Cangzhou rebellion, the third elder of Qianyuan Jianzong placed his son in Cangzhou to open up the family, which may not have made Yi Wudao the overlord of Cangzhou. It's just that Yi Wudao couldn't support the wall with mud. Not only did he fail to improve his cultivation, but he couldn't even win people's hearts. All the monks in Cangzhou were offended by him again and again. To be honest, in terms of the ability to offend people, most people are not as strong as Yi Wudao. At least Qin Daoxian could not offend all the monks in Cangzhou now. Chapter 245, half a month later. The Cangzhou allied forces entered the Taizhou border in a mighty manner. As soon as I entered the Taizhou boundary, I encountered more monks along the way. From these scattered escapes, it can be seen that most of these are loose cultivators from Yuanshan Xiancheng and cultivators from Taizhou small families. The big clans like Taizhou Jiang family and Jingzhou Ji family traveled in a fleet of spirit boats that covered the sky and the sun, and it was impossible for them to be as scattered as loose cultivators. On the first ship of the Cangzhou fleet, Zhou Mubai and the others stood on the deck of the spirit boat, watching from the sky. Suddenly, a spirit boat fleet, nearly 5 times larger than the Cangzhou fleet, flew over in the direction of the Cangzhou fleet. That is, it's the fleet of the Ji family in Jingzhou. Henry Zhang looked around, saw the flag of the Ji family on the first ship and replied. Qin Daoxian couldn't help but think of the Ji Yanzhao child he met in Yuanshan Xiancheng, and secretly said, with such a strong strength, it is no wonder that the name of the Ji family in Jingzhou can make the Jiang family Tianjiao give in. When Taoist Tuoling saw this scene, he smacked his lips and murmured, I don't know what happened across the Taizhou passage this time. It is worth my tri-state cultivator to fight so hard. Who knows? Henry Zhang shook his head. Qianyuan Jianzong blocked the news very deadly. Even if the few present were the heirs of the top immortal clan in Cangzhou, they didn't know why Qianyuan Jianzong's summoning order was issued. It's just that according to the decree of Qianyuan Jianzong, once the omen order is issued, no family or cultivator in Wanxinghai can disobey, otherwise it will be regarded as a betrayal of Qianyuan Jianzong, and will be punished by Qianyuan Jianzong and the major immortal families of Wanxinghai. Punish. This is also the reason why the Qin family on Shuanghu Island did not hesitate to notify Qin Daoxian immediately after receiving the call-up order. In the sky, in addition to the Jiang family fleet, another fleet flew towards them. It's the fleet of Yuanshan Xiancheng. Zhou Mubai recognized the symbol of Yuanshan Xiancheng on the bow at a glance. Really? Before the two fleets converged, a voice sounded in everyone's mind, Taoists from Cangzhou, why don't you go together? Qin Daoxian recognized on the spot that this was the voice of Yuanying monk, Yuanshan Jinjuan, from Yuanshan Xiancheng. He was fortunate enough to hear the other party speak once in Yuanshan Xiancheng, and was very familiar with the voice of Yuanshan Jinjuan. Not only Qin Daoxian, other people probably listened to each other's sermons in Yuanshan Xiancheng, so they are very familiar with Yuanshan Zhenjin's voice. After everyone looked at each other, they all bowed and said, I will obey the decree of the true monarch. Good. Jinju and Yuanchen nodded. Soon, the two fleets slowly merged into one fleet under the dispatch of the Zhangzhou clans and Yuanchen Xiancheng. This time, the momentum of the Zhangzhou fleet has soared. Although it is still not as good as the fleets of the Jingzhou Ji family and Taizhou Jiang family, compared with the spirit boats of the small clans in various states, it is undoubtedly the third place in Taizhou, Jingzhou and Zhangzhou. Great power. After the Zhangzhou fleet and the fleet of Yuanchen Xiancheng merged, everyone was fortunate to meet Yuanchen Jinjuan, a senior in the Yuanying period, on the first ship of the Zhangzhou fleet. For the first time, Chen Daoxian came into close contact with this true monarch Yuanchen. Apart from being tall and burly, this true monarch Yuanchen doesn't seem to be much different from an ordinary cultivator. Even when the other party was standing there, Chen Daoxian felt that he was just like an ordinary old man next door. Ordinary old man next door. Chen Daoxian was shocked. This is true monarch Yuanying, how could it be the old man next door? The power of true monarch Yuanying is not something he can fathom at all. Originally, he felt that after Wan Xinghai learned the three-headed and six-armed supernatural powers after several trials, his strength was not inferior to the top Zifu monks on the Zifu Tianjiao list. But now it seems that the top Zifu cultivators on the Zifu Tianjiao list are not bad if they can touch the side of ordinary Jindan cultivators. Zhou Mubai and others seem to have felt this too. After seeing Jinjuan Yuanchen himself, their attitude became more respectful, and they followed the attitude of Jinjuan Yuanchen. Everyone, relax, don't be nervous. Jinjuan Yuanchen smiled and waved his hand. Yes, senior. Zhou Mubai and the others slowly raised their heads, and they all breathed a sigh of relief when they met Jinjuan Yuanchen's sincere gaze. To be honest, true monarch Yuanchen, the great cultivator of Yuanying, wants to walk with everyone, and it is impossible to say that everyone is not nervous. Although true monarch Yuanchen's reputation has always been very good, but he knows what he knows, but who knows what he thinks? Who knows what this true monarch Yuanying, who can suppress everyone in the palm of his hand, thinks? But now it seems that Jinjuan Yuanchen is not malicious. Seeing everyone relax, Jinjuan Yuanchen nodded and said straight to the point, I don't know what you all think about the Qianyuan sword sect's summoning order. This. Everyone looked at each other in dismay. They didn't even know why Qianyuan Jianzong recruited their Zhangzhou monks, so what were their opinions? Chen Daoxian bowed his hands to the Yuanchen true monarch and said respectfully, I also asked the seniors to point out the maze. Hearing this, Jinjuan Yuanchen stroked his beard and said with a smile, I know something about this matter. Hear this. Everyone pricked up their ears. You all know that there is a real demon world passage in the Taizhou boundary, but you should not know what is on the other side of the passage. True monarch Yuanchen paused. The world demon force opposite the Taizhou passage, called Qingqiu Demon Kingdom, is a force established by a world demon named Qingqiu Demon Lord. The real demon world is the same as our cultivator world, and it is also intertwined with large and small forces. This Qingqiu demon country is only one of the many forces in the real demon world. Originally, with the strength of the Qingqiu demon kingdom, it was more than enough for the Jiang family in Taizhou to guard the passage to the true demon realm, but this time a treasure appeared in the Qingqiu demon nation, which attracted many forces in the true demon realm to come to the Qingqiu demon realm. Therefore, Qianyuan Jianzong had to urgently recruit monks from 3 states to go to Taizhou for support. I see. Chen Daoxian nodded, and then he wondered again. However, since there are many powerful demon masters coming to the Qingqiu demon country, why doesn't Qianyuan Jianzong send more Yuanying Jinjuan to come? Of course I did. True monarch Yuanchen said with a smile, the hall master of Jinhai Palace is here too. Palace Master Qin is here. Daoist Huoling's eyes lit up. Hearing the arrival of the hall master of Jinhai Palace, everyone breathed a sigh of relief. The shadow of the famous tree of people. As one of the youngest 7 hall masters of Qianyuan sword sect, Qin Zhan has always been known as the most talented monk in Qianyuan sword sect history. His strength is even more firmly in the top 3 in the entire Qianyuan sword sect, and the top 5 in the entire Wangxinghai. Sending such a strong person here is enough to prove that Qianyuan Jianzong attaches great importance to the treasures born in the Qingqiu demon country. In other words, Qianyuan Jianzong is worried about these demons in the real demon world, and under the guise of competing for treasures, they will invade Wangxinghai with a false shot. Hearing that Jinjuan Yuanchen explained everything to everyone in such detail, everyone vaguely understood the thoughts of Yuanchen Jinjuan. What Sangzhou cultivators lack most now is a high-level cultivator capable of suppressing one side. Although true monarch Yuanchen has an immortal city, most of these cultivators are loose cultivators and cannot be dispatched by true monarch Yuanchen. In fact, the number of monks that Jinjuan Yuanchen can directly dispatch is very limited. This can be seen from the fact that Yuanchen Xianqing has tens of millions of scattered repairers, but the fleet of Yuanchen Xianqing is not as large as the fleet of Cangzhou. In fact, it was the same in Cangzhou. Except for the disaster that affected the entire Cangzhou last time, ordinary scattered cultivators would not listen to the dispatch of the immortal clan. Annoying the loose cultivator, the other party patted his and left. This is also the reason why Chen Daoxian ordered Lei Zhen to reorganize the new army, and only 3,000 people were reorganized after abolishing the power of 9 bulls and 2 tigers. It's not that other cultivators who have not been incorporated into the new army are waste, but many loose cultivators are reluctant to join the new army established by the Qin family after the corpse tide in Cangzhou ends. From the point of view of the loose cultivator, it is better to go to the battlefield of the Cloud Kingdom to work for the Qin family. At least the Qianyuan Jianzong gave more. This kind of thinking of loose cultivation, no one has changed. The same is true for Yuanchen Jinjuan. Although his cultivation base is extremely high, he is a Yuaning cultivator. For true monarch Yuanchen, the loose cultivators respect, but they are asked to sacrifice their lives to obey the dispatch of the other party. Sorry, can't do it. The monks of the Cangzhou fleet were different. The main body of this Cangzhou fleet is the cultivators of each family in Cangzhou. Compared with the loose cultivators, the obedience of family cultivators is much higher. Take the cultivator of the Qin family as an example. Not to mention letting the Qin family cultivators fight for the family, even if they had been educated on family loyalty since childhood, none of them would frown. The elite children of other families are not much different from the Qin family cultivators. The loyalty education to the family is something that every cultivator family will do. This is also the guarantee of the strong cohesion of the Shuxian family. The cohesion of the family is strong, that is, with the blood as the link and the education of the family as the foundation. The family cultivator who grows up in this way will fight for the family with all his heart. In terms of unity and cohesion, the sect monks are not as good as the family monks. On the deck of the ship, seeing that everyone was silent, Jinjuan Yuanchen said bluntly, "I will say it directly, I, Yuanchen Xianqing, want to form a verbal alliance with you." Hearing this, everyone looked at each other. Zhou Mubai cupped his hands and said, "I dare to ask, Senior, what is an alliance in words? You have also seen that I am short of subordinates, and you Cangzhou cultivators lack high-level cultivators to suppress one side. You Cangzhou cultivators and my Yuanchen Xianqing formed an alliance, and in an instant, they were the third place comparable to the Jiang family in Taizhou and the Ji family in Jingzhou. Great power. In this way, after we go there, the right to speak can be heavier. True monarch Yuanchen's words are quite straightforward. When everyone saw that Jinjuan Yuanchen was so sincere and did not hide it, Zhou Mubai cupped his hands and said, "But, since it is an alliance, there must be a leader, right? Hear this." Jinjuan Yuanchen said with a smile, "Why, do you still want to order this old man? Don't dare." Zhou Mubai hurriedly bowed, then raised his head again, and said with a firm gaze, "But we Cangzhou cultivators don't want to be betrayed." Hearing this, Chen Daoxian and the others all stood with Zhou Mubai and looked at Jinjuan Yuanchen quietly. Everyone looked at each other for a while. Jinjuan Yuanchen burst out laughing, "I heard before that in Yunshao Palace, you Cangzhou cultivators dared to stand up to the pressure of Yi Yin's family and scold Yi Wudao. I didn't believe it at the time, but now it seems that Yu He really has the guts." Hearing this, everyone bowed again, but their attitude remained firm. "That's it. Jinjuan Yuanchen waved his hand. The two of us have formed an alliance. After an incident, I will be the leader in the open, and we will discuss it in secret. How about that? Hearing this, everyone laughed, cupped their hands and said, "Follow the instructions of the seniors." Jinjuan Yuanchen shook his head with a smile. The arrogant spirit of the Zhangzhou cultivator made him even more satisfied. Although the Zhangzhou cultivator was somewhat arrogant, the most fearless person on the battlefield was the arrogant person. On the battlefield, the person who is most afraid of encountering is Yi Wudao, who runs away at a critical moment. Be a comrade in arms with an arrogant person, at least he will not betray you at a critical moment. Say it again. People with arrogance are basically cultivators with natural talent and evil spirits. With the eyes of true monarch Yuanchen, it is natural to see at a glance that these people present are either Jianqiu or Tianjiao on the Zifu Tianjiao list. Yuanchen Jinjuan was also on the Zifu Tianjiao list that year, and his ranking was still very high. He naturally knew that the genius and evildoer who could be listed on the Zifu Tianjiao ranking would be almost certain to break through to the golden core cultivation level as long as he did not fall in the future. It is not impossible to even become the Yuanying Jinjuan like him. For this kind of junior cultivator with great potential, Jinjuan Yuanchen naturally thinks highly of it, and even has a very kind attitude. If it were an ordinary Zifu cultivator who dared to talk to him like that, he would have slapped him to death long ago. Less than 10 days. The mighty Zhangzhou fleet finally arrived at its destination. The real Demon World passage in Taizhou is different from the newly formed passage in Demon Ape Mountain. The first is the location. The Taizhou passage is not on the seabed of Wangxinghai, but on a vast desert island. Of course, the current island can no longer be called a desert island. This island has long been cultivated by the Qianyuan Jianzong with a sixth-order spiritual vein, and various killing formations have been laid out to prevent the monsters from the opposite side of the passage from killing out. Usually, this island is a restricted area within a radius of 10,000 miles. Except for the location. The Taizhou Passage and the Magic Ape Mountain Passage are also different in size. Since the passage in the Demon Ape Mountain has just been formed, its size is only about 1 meter in diameter, and it can just pass through a person. And this passage also requires the cultivation of those who pass through. Because this passage of Demon Ape Mountain has just been formed, it is not very stable. If someone with a high cultivation base passes through, it is easy for the passage to collapse, causing the cultivator to be strangled by the power of space after the passage has collapsed. For now, the passage of Demonic Ape Mountain can only allow monks at or below the foundation building stage to pass through at most. But the Taizhou channel is different. Rather than calling it a channel, the Taizhou passage is better called the fusion of the two worlds. When the Zhangzhou cultivator and the Yuanchen Xianqing cultivator set foot on this vast deserted island, after passing through layers of inspection, they entered the formation. Everyone was stunned by the scene in front of them. Different from the black hole-like passage that Chen Daoxian once saw, on this deserted island, Chen Daoxian saw the real demon world directly through the so-called passage. In other words, the real demon world is slowly integrating with this deserted island. The starting point of the fusion is the location of the Taizhou passage. Let's go. True monarch Yuanchen looked at the scene in front of him solemnly, and said solemnly. Please remember this book's first domain name. _WAP. Only when the two worlds are merged will he not feel dizzy after crossing the boundary, otherwise he will feel dizzy even if he passes through the space passage, let alone the passage that crosses the two realms. After the other people passed through the Taizhou passage, their faces were also a little surprised, but when they saw that the Qianyuan Jianzong cultivator Zhou who came to greet everyone did not explain, everyone did not ask. It can be seen that under the cloud of war, every cultivator here is very nervous now. Gathering the power of the outside world of the three states and the Qianyuan sword sect, one can imagine how terrifying the power of this deserted island under the feet of everyone. In this level of war, even Jindan cultivators are insignificant. Only true monarch nascent soul can influence this level of war. After a few breaths, Everyone finally set foot on Weiyang Xianqing. After crossing the Taizhou Passage, everyone found that Weiyang Xianqing was bigger than everyone saw. Previously, due to channel restrictions, what everyone saw was only the tip of the iceberg of Weiyang Xianqing. Now that they have officially entered the real demon world through the Taizhou Channel, everyone discovered how huge the Weiyang Immortal City is. When everyone entered the Weiyang Xianqing, the Shao surnamed Jindan cultivator introduced, the Weiyang Xianqing alone has a wall length of more than 1,000 kilometers, and there are 36 Tiangang Acropolis and 72 Disha Acropolis attached to these acropolis. The formation that seals the sky and locks the earth not only protects Weiyang Immortal City, but also our outermost line of defense. Cultivator Shao Jindan pointed to the 108 satellite immortal cities suspended outside Weiyang Immortal City. A weapon of war? Zhou Mubai looked at the 108 satellite immortal cities outside Weiyang Immortal City, and exclaimed in surprise. Right. Cultivator Shao Jindan glanced at Zhou Mubai in surprise. After a while, he seemed to recognize him and said with a smile, "You are Zhou Mubai, the 9th in the Zifu Tianjiao ranking, right?" Junior Zhou Mubai, I have met Senior Shao. Zhou Mubai didn't dare to be arrogant, and hurriedly bowed and saluted. You are welcome. Cultivator Shao Jindan waved his hand, Senior Yuanchen, everyone, the palace master Qin is in the palace in front of him, and he has defenses under him, so I won't send you off. Fellow Daoist Shao is polite. Thank you Senior. Yuanchen Jinjuan and the senior cultivators of Zhangzhou all bowed their hands to cultivator Shao Jindan and thanked him. The cultivator Shao Jindan nodded, turned into a flash of light in public, and flew out of the fairy city. As he said. Now the three state cultivators are all gathering towards the Taizhou Channel. As the Jindan cultivator who guards Weiyang Xianqing all the year round, he is busier than anyone else at the moment. Being able to take such a long time to receive the crowd is mostly due to the face of Yuan Chen Jinjuan, the Yuaning cultivator. Otherwise, only Chen Daoxian and others would come, and there would definitely be no Jindan cultivator to come to them. Even Chen Daoxian and Zhou Mubai were not even qualified to enter the main hall to discuss matters. Regardless of the large number of monks sent by the major immortal clans in Zhangzhou, it is also true that there are no high-level monks in Zhangzhou. Whether it is the Jiang family in Taizhou or the Ji family in Jingzhou, they are both famous Yuanying families, and they are not comparable to the scattered immortal clans in Zhangzhou. This is also the reason why Zhangzhou cultivator agreed to cooperate with Yuanchen Jinjuan. Rather than being dispatched by the Jiang family in Taizhou and the Ji family in Jingzhou, it is better to rely on Jinjuan Yuanchen, a loose cultivator. At least their Zhangzhou cultivators will not be used as cannon fodder by the other two Yuanying families in the war. Coming. Have not yet entered the hall. A majestic voice sounded in the sea of consciousness of everyone. Chen Daoxian instantly recognized that this was the voice of Qin Zhan, the master of Zhenhai Palace. Compared with the cynicism of the Qin Palace master in his impression, the Zhenhai Palace master's tone was much more serious this time. Obviously, the trouble they encountered this time was not small. Everyone responded and entered the hall. Entering the hall, everyone saw that the hall was already full of monks. The monks in the hall are at least at the Jindan stage. From their sitting positions, it can be roughly distinguished that the monks in the hall are roughly divided into three camps. They were the Taizhou cultivator camp headed by the Jiang family, the Jingzhou cultivator camp headed by the Ji family, and the Qianyuan Jianzong cultivator headed by the Zhenhai Palace hall master. As true monarch Yuanchen entered the hall, it was barely counted as the fourth camp. It's just that this fourth camp is quite shabby. Apart from Yuanchen Jinjuan, the Yuanying cultivator, only his eldest disciple has reached the Jindan cultivation base. As for the Zhangzhou cultivator, there is not even a Jindan. Since fellow Daoist Yuanchen is here, let's start our battle meeting. Qin Zhan, who was sitting high, glanced at Jinjuan Yuanchen. Yuanchen Jinjuan and Zhangzhou cultivator bowed their hands to the crowd and sat down in their seats. The hall master of Zhenhai Palace continued, everyone, please take a look. He waved his hand, and a curtain of light appeared in the center of the hall. On the light curtain, A giant city surrounded by chess piece-sized satellite immortal cities appeared at one end, and at the other end, there was a continuous country of world demons, the Qingqiu Demon Country. Weiyang Immortal City and our Tiangang Disha Acropolis control a total area of thousands of miles around the Taizhou Passage, and out of the Acropolis is the Qingqiu Demon Kingdom. The Qingqiu Demon Country is a demon country established by the Qingqiu Demon Lord. The Qingqiu Demon Lord's body is a nine-tailed celestial fox clan, and later became a world demon by cultivating the unique method of origin. As one of the many demon kingdoms in the real demon world, the Qingqiu Demon Country is nothing to be afraid of. With the power of the Weiyang Fairy City, it can be completely resisted. But according to the detailed report we planted in the Qingqiu Demon Nation, a remarkable treasure has recently been born in the Qingqiu Demon Nation. Speaking of this, the Hall Master of Jinhai Palace said in a single word, the source world left by a true immortal level demon. What? The source world left by the real fairy level demon? Hearing this, the monks in the hall below the Jindan stage didn't react much, but several true monarchs of nascent soul exclaimed in surprise. Obviously, the origin of this true immortal level world demon is no trivial matter. Cangzhou Camp. Chen Daoxian and his group frowned. The Hall Master of Jinhai Palace did not give up and explained, as we all know, the way of cultivation of world demons is different from that of our monks, they do not follow the way of qi or body. The way of the world monsters practice is called the law of the source world. The so-called source world method is that the world monster cultivates a new world within the body, and the strength of the world monster will continue to improve with the growth of this Fengyuan world. The Jia Yuanzhu we harvested after beheading the realm demon is the source of the realm demon. Hearing this, everyone nodded. These are some common sense things. Maybe the bottom cultivators of Wanxinghai don't know much, but those who can sit here are at least the helms of the overlord-level forces of a government. They don't know everything about the common sense of the world demon, but they have basically heard of it. Seeing everyone nodding, the Hall Master of Jinhai Palace continued, generally speaking, after the death of a weak world demon, the source world will quickly turn into chaos, so the JUN beads we got in our hands are all gray and gray, filled with the chaotic aura of the destruction of the world. However, with the improvement of the power of the world demon, it will take longer and longer for the source world left behind after its death to turn into chaos. Hearing this, Chen Daoxian froze in his heart. He suddenly thought of the Zifu-level world monster that his clone killed in Dayuan. It seemed that the other party's Jiuanzu slowly returned to chaos for a long time after being taken out. This is still the case with the Zifu-level world demon, but what about the true immortal-level world demon? The way of refining qi and the way of refining body becomes immortal, the soul is pure yang, and the immortal body is immortal. What will happen if the method of the source world becomes a true immortal? It may be too exaggerated that the source world is a world by itself, but the speed of the destruction of the real immortal world, the demon source world, must be very long. The source world left by the true immortal level world demon is enough to remain immortal for tens or even millions of years without external interference. The master of Jinhai Palace looked around at everyone, and the origin of the Qingqiu Demon Kingdom was born from a true immortal level world demon who has fallen for an unknown number of years. This. In the main hall, the monks with lower cultivation bases did not feel much, but the Jiang family and Ji family's several nascent soul true monarchs were all excited, and could not wait to immediately enter the source world left by the true immortal level demons to explore. But immediately these 5 Yuaning true monarchs seemed to think of something, and their faces were hard to look at. Palace Master Qin, below, Jiang Laozu, who was wearing a black Taoist robe, said, since the true immortal level origin world was born, there must be a lot of demon masters who went to the Qingqiu Demon Nation to seize the opportunity this time. It's a lot. Qin Zhan nodded. As far as I know, there are the 7 demon masters of the Lion and Camel Demon Country, the 3 demon lords of the Extreme Night Demon Country, and the 5 demon lords of the Qingqiu Demon Country. Hearing this, Jiang Laozu frowned suddenly. Strange, among the 3 demon kingdoms adjacent to the Qingqiu Demon Kingdom, the Great Yuan Demon Kingdom is the strongest. Why didn't the Great Yuan Demon Kingdom send demons this time? The Lord is coming. I don't know. The hall master of Jinhai Hall shook his head. This was also what he was most worried about. Within the area of 1 million miles in Weiyang Xiancheng, there were 4 major demon kingdoms, namely Lion Camel Demon Country, Qingqiu Demon Country, Dayuan Demon Country and Jia Demon Country. Among the 4 major demon nations, the Great Yuan Demon Nation is the strongest. There are more than 10 demon masters alone, and it is the only one among the 4 major demon nations that has more than 2-digit demon masters. But this time, the Great Yuan Demon Nation did not send the demon master here. The Qianyuan Sword sect had the intention to find out, but the Dayuan Demon Country and Weiyang Immortal City were separated by a Qingqiu Demon Country. The Qianyuan Sword sect's undercover agent wanted to pass through the Qingqiu Demon Country and enter the Dayuan Demon Country to investigate in detail, no doubt. A fool's dream. After all, it is different from the spies sent to Izumo. This is the real monster world. All the monsters active in this world are world monsters. Even if there are human races, it is the ration of world monsters. Qianyuan Jianzong wants to develop detailed works here, and the difficulty can be imagined. Inside the Zhangzhou camp, Qindao Xian, who had been silent for a long time, heard that the demon lord of Dayuan did not send a demon master, and his heart moved slightly. No. Because of his avatar, right? His avatar had been beheading and killing world monsters in the Great Yuan Demon Country before, causing great waves in the Great Yuan Country. More importantly, the demon lord of the Great Yuan dynasty sent the demon lord to arrest his clones several times, but none of them were caught. This made the demon masters of the Great Yuan Demon Nation a little unable to sit still. As a demon country force, a thief came into my house and kept attacking and beheading my own low-level world demon. Who can resist this kind of digging the foundation of one's own family? In particular, Qindao Xian beheading a Zifu-level world demon queen completely touched the bottom line of the Great Yuan Demon Nation. Ask yourself, if there is a thief near Chen's Shuanghu Island who specializes in attacking and killing his own chi-refining cultivator, Qindao Xian will find this thief even if he digs 3 feet into the ground. Who cares about winning treasures and opportunities? Inside the hall. When the Yuanian cultivators heard that the Great Yuan Demon Nation did not send a demon master, their hearts sank slightly. The most worrying thing is not the number of enemies, but the powerful enemies waiting for the opportunity like poisonous snakes, and I don't know when they will give you a fatal blow. At this time, a stern-faced nascent soul cultivator from the G family said, "So, there are 15 nascent soul-level demon masters on the upper-level demon side, and we only have 7 nascent soul true monarchs?" The hall master of Jinhai Hall nodded, "That's true." Hearing this, Jinjuan Yuanchen also frowned. Palace Master Qin, does Qianyuan Jianzong have no backup? No, Qin Zhan shook his head and said with deep eyes, "But you have made a mistake. We are facing the forces of the 3 major demon kingdoms, not the 15 world demons." Hearing this, all the Yuanian cultivators couldn't help but be stunned. Indeed, the battles between the major demon kingdoms and the real demon world are no worse than the battles between the sects in the immortal world. Even the war between the real demon world and the demon kingdom is more cruel. You must know that the world monsters can not only devour the human race, but also each other. Perhaps the characteristics of the law of the source world are destined to be difficult for the world monsters to fully unite together. It is already very rare for the demon masters to open up a demon kingdom and form a party. If they want to completely unify the real demon world, it is almost a dream. Please remember this book's first domain name. _WAP. Chapter 247. Weiyang Xiancheng. Inside the hall. When the cultivators heard the words of the hall master of Jinhai Palace, a ridiculous thought appeared in their hearts. True monarch Yuanchen cupped his hands and said hesitantly, "What the hall master Qin means is." Qin Zhan stood up from his seat. "I mean, instead of sitting in Weiyang Xiancheng, we should take the initiative to attack." Take the initiative to attack? Ancestor Jiang frowned. The rest of the nascent soul cultivators also frowned and said nothing. True monarch Yuanchen said with a solemn expression, I don't know how Hall Master Qin plans to take the initiative to attack. Qin Zhan glanced at true monarch Yuanqin, then glanced at other Yuanying monks, and said, I know, you are worried that after the 3 demon masters gather in Qingqiu demon country, it will be detrimental to my Weiyang Xiancheng, and even take the opportunity to join together. Send troops to attack Wan Xinghai. But in my opinion, the possibility of such a situation is extremely small. The frequency of battles between the 3 demon kingdoms of Qingqiu, Jie, and Shihua is no less than the battle between us and the Qingqiu demon kingdom. In addition, the great Yuan demon nation has a tiger's eye on the side. These 3 major demon countries will definitely not fight with us, so as not to be taken advantage of by the great Yuan demon nation after losing both. Hearing this analysis, Jiang Laozu nodded. The disputes between the 4 demon kingdoms, the Jiang family has guarded Weiyang Xiancheng for so many years, it is much clearer than Sangzhou and Jingzhou cultivators. It can be said that the contradiction between these 4 demon kingdoms is no less than the contradiction between Qingqiu demon kingdom and Weiyang fairy city, and even bigger. Because Weiyang Xiancheng is just a defensive Xiancheng after all. The purpose of Qianyuan Jianzong for so many years is to build a fairy city at the entrance of the real demon world to prevent the monsters from invading the Wangxinghai. Qianyuan Jianzong itself has no plans to invade the real monster world. After all, the Qianyuan sword sect and the Izumo kingdom are still at war, and a normal-minded force will not do such a thing as a two-front war. As if thinking of something, Jiang Laozu cupped his hands and said, but if we do this, will it irritate the major demon nations? You must know that over the years, our Weiyang Xiancheng has been keeping a low profile, and we have maintained a relatively stable situation with the other 3 demon nations. If we rashly intervene this time, will it lead to a rebound from the forces of the demon nations? What is true is false, what is false is true. The Hall Master of Xinhai Hall shook his head. It is precisely because the strength of our Weiyang Xiancheng on the bright side is not as strong as that of the major demon nations combined, so we must maintain our strength. Otherwise, once we show a weak posture, we will really suffer the catastrophe. Hearing Qin Zhan's words, old ancestor Jiang did not know what to think, and his heart froze, so he no longer objected. Jingzhou Jis family and Sangzhou cultivator knew little about the situation here in Weiyang Xiancheng. Seeing that Jiang's family, who had been guarding this place all the year round, did not object, there was no reason to object. Glancing at everyone, the Hall Master of Xinhai Palace said, since everyone does not object, then take the initiative to attack. Take the initiative to attack. Take the initiative to attack. In the hall, a Qianyuan Jianzong cultivator quickly shouted after Qin Zhan, and then took the initiative to attack. These 4 words, resounding through the hall. Chen Daoxian looked at the emotional crowd and said nothing. On this occasion, not to mention the small Shuanghu Island Qin family, even the entire Sangzhou cultivator group, did not have much say. Who made Sangzhou cultivator the weakest among the 3 states? The Sangzhou cultivators were able to attend as non-voting delegates, which was already considered a face for them. If you speak in public again, you will be a little confused. The Hall Master of Xinhai Hall pressed his hand, and the blood-straining shouts in the hall suddenly stopped. Qin Zhan continued, since we are taking the initiative to attack, we must also list a charter. Daoyu Jiang, what do you think? Ancestor Jiang cupped his hands and said humbly, everything is at the command of Hall Master Qin. Okay. Qin Zhan is no longer polite. I plan to arrange monks below the Zifu period to participate in the competition for the treasures in the Qingqiu Demon Kingdom's true immortal origin realm. But, will the demon masters of the 3 major demon kingdoms agree? Of course they will agree, and they have to agree if they disagree. Qin Zhan sneered, although the true immortal level source world can be immortal for hundreds of thousands of years, this is only under normal circumstances. If there are more than 20 nascent soul-level monks fighting in this source world, what do you think about this source world? How will the world be? Zhenjuan Yuanqin nodded, I'm afraid it will collapse in an instant, turning into chaos. It seems that they will indeed agree. Ancestor Jiang and Ancestor Ji nodded in succession. Qin Zhan added, furthermore, our nascent soul cultivator has another advantage of not entering the source realm, that is, We can withdraw to Weiyang Xianqing at any time. At that time, with the defense of Weiyang Immortal City, even if the demon masters of the 4 major demon kingdoms attack jointly, we can still insist on the rescue of Zhongmen. Hearing this, the cultivators were convinced by Qin Zhan's arrangement that he could attack, retreat and defend. In fact, after learning that Qingqiu Yaoguo's true immortal origin realm was born, the true monarch nascent soul who was present at the scene was a little overwhelmed. The reason why they didn't take the initiative to attack was because they were worried that this move would lead to the fall of Weiyang Xianqing. When Qianyuan Jianzong convicted, they would lose more than their gains. Now that the Hall Master of Jinhai Palace has offered to compete for the treasure, the nascent soul cultivators who were present were eager to applaud, and no one would really object. The battle meeting lasted for more than an hour before it was completely dismissed. Out of the hall, Chen Daoxian and his party of Zhangzhou cultivators followed closely behind true monarch Yuanchen and flew to a mansion in Xianqing specially arranged for true monarch Yuanying. Inside the fairy mansion, after Zhenjuan Yuanchen took his seat, he smiled and said, "Stop standing, just sit." "Thank you, senior." Chen Daoxian and the others looked at each other, bowed their hands to thank them, and took their seats. Senior, as soon as Daoist Huoling sat down, he couldn't wait to say, "What does Hall Master Qin mean today is that he wants me to wait for the cultivators of Zifu to go to Zhengxianyuan realm to capture treasures." True monarch Yuanchen held a cup of spiritual tea and said with a smile, "Not only the cultivators of the Zifu, but also the cultivators of the Foundation establishment." Foundation monk? Chen Daoxian, who had been silent all this time, raised his head in surprise. He originally thought that this matter had nothing to do with him. Anyway, he was not a cultivator of Zifu, so it would never be his turn to take risks in the source realm. Although all the nascent soul cultivators were jealous of this real fairyland, Chen Daoxian didn't care. If it weren't for the summoning order of Qianyuan Jianzong this time, it would be difficult to disobey. Chen Daoxian didn't want to come here at all. Not to mention the danger of the real demon world, can the so-called chance here be compared to the trial inheritance of Wan Xinghai? Chen Daoxian retreated in the magic monkey mountain. He was at a time when his strength was advancing by leaps and bounds, so he would rather go out and take risks. But no matter how daring the Chen family was, they did not dare to disobey the orders of Qianyuan Jianzong. "Yes, base building cultivator." True monarch Yuanchen nodded. Palace Master Qin intends to arrange 1,000 Zifu monks and 10,000 foundation building monks to go to the true immortal origin realm to explore. Senior. Zhou Mubai cupped his hands. Junior took the liberty to ask, "What treasures are there in this true immortal level source realm, which is worthy of the Qianyuan sword sect such a big fight?" "Hear this." Zhenjuan Yuanchen was silent for a moment, then looked around and said, "You should all know that the cultivation of the origin of the world demon is to give birth to a complete world in the body, right?" Everyone nodded. "And the world monster wants to breed a world. At the beginning, it only needs to swallow all kinds of blood food. For example, the world monster loves to swallow the human race, which is the spirit of all things." Zhenjuan Yuanchen paused, but as the source realm in the demon's body continues to grow, it is not enough to just swallow all kinds of blood food. To put it simply, nurturing the source world is like building a house. At first, they only need to pile up violently to make the house bigger and more spacious, but as the house gets bigger and bigger, it becomes more and more prone to collapse. At this time, it is necessary to fill the beams and skeletons for the house. Law of the Great Way? Zhou Mubai caught something in an instant. "Yes, the law of the avenue." Zhenjuan Yuanchen nodded. Chen Daoxian was taken aback. This statement deviates from the statement of Luo Xiuyuan, the head of the Merman clan. Luo Xiuyuan said at the beginning that the world demon can always become stronger as long as it keeps swallowing it. But according to Zhenjuan Yuanchen, it is obviously not that simple. Chen Daoxian prefers true monarch Yuanchen in his heart. If the world monster really doesn't need to understand the Tao, and can only become stronger by swallowing it blindly, who can resist the temptation of such a terrifying method of cultivation? Although Chen Daoxian didn't know whether the human race could practice the method of the origin of the world demon, But if he wanted to come to this method to be so perverted, there would definitely be countless monks who went one after another to improve the method of the source world suitable for the monks of the human race. It is clear. The method of the origin of the world monster's cultivation must be inferior to the human race's way of refining chi and refining the body. In other words, both have their pros and cons. Even the human race's way of refining chi is even better. True monarch Yuanchen continued, the world monsters are probably cultivating to the point where they are equivalent to the human race Jindan cultivators, and they will begin to fill the source world in the body with the laws of the Tao. Zhou Mubai frowned, Senior, do you mean that the realm demon will fill the source realm with the realization of the Tao law that he has comprehended? That's right. Jinjuan Yuanchen gave Zhou Mubai a teachable look. This time, everyone finally knew why the nascent soul cultivator in the hall was so excited. If there is no accident, since the Tao law in the source world can be realized, it must be able to be taken out. Really? True monarch Yuanchen said, whether it is the demon masters of the major demon kingdoms, or us true monarchs of nascent soul, they are all interested in the laws of the great Tao in the true immortal level source world. Hearing this, Henry Zhang frowned and said, but this true immortal level world demon has been dead for many years. Will there still be the Tao law in the source world it left behind? There must be. True monarch Yuanchen firmly said, if the Tao law does not exist, even the real immortal level source world will collapse in an instant, and it will never last for so long. Road rule. Everyone's mood was a little heavy. The cultivation of human race monks has always been to comprehend the Tao outside and cultivate oneself inside. But the avenue is vague, how easy is it to comprehend? Whether you enter the Tao with swords, or enter the Tao with techniques, you will find that when you reach a certain level of practice, you will find that the two have the same goal in different ways, and they are essentially comprehension of the Tao. And if you want to comprehend the laws of the Tao more smoothly, in addition to relying on your own understanding, there is another way, that is, to make the Tao appear more clearly in front of you. The method of improving understanding is not common in the world of immortals. Even if there are some treasures that can temporarily improve the understanding of monks, most of them can be found. And it is even more nonsense to let the Tao clearly appear in front of the monk. This kind of treasure is rarer than the treasure that enhances the cultivator's comprehension. Coincidentally, the Tao law in the source world left by the high-level demons is such a treasure. Of course, the Tao laws left by the world demon are generally not very useful. Because in the same rank, the world monster's understanding of the Tao law is not as good as that of the human race cultivator. Even the Tao principles left by the demon lord are just tasteless to true monarch nascent soul. But the origin realm where the Qingqiu demon nation was born was different, it was left by the real fairy-level realm demon. True immortal-level world demons are 3 realms higher than Yuanying monks, and even if true immortal-level world monsters have a low understanding of the Tao law, they are far from what Yuanying Jinjuan can match. This kind of treasure, may I ask which monk is not moved? Unfortunately, once the Tao law in the source world is taken out, it will eventually dissipate in the world, even if it is a true immortal-level world demon. Speaking of this, Jinjuan Yuanchen shook his head, speaking of which, the world monsters have a much greater advantage than our human cultivators in this regard, they can directly swallow the Tao law left by the other party, just go back and slow down. Digest slowly. Hearing this, Qin Daoxian couldn't help but wonder, then can we use the Jiyuanzu to store the Tao law? Of course not. True monarch Yuanchen said with a smile, your idea, Chenyuan Jianzong has already tried it, and it turns out that only living demons can swallow the Tao laws left by other demons. Daoist Hualing's eyes lit up and said, since this is the case, why don't we control a high-level world demon, let it swallow the Tao law, and then supply my human race monks to practice. Jinjuan Yuanchen said with a smile, this idea is not bad, but are you willing to practice in the belly of the world demon? Ah! When Taoist Hualing heard the words, he smiled and stopped talking. If you want to collect the Tao law left by the world monster, you can only rely on it. Jinjuan Yuanchen stretched out his palm, and a quaint mini stone tablet appeared in his palm. Who knows? Zhou Mubai's expression changed suddenly when he saw this mini stone tablet, and he exclaimed, "Stone tablet on the avenue." Hearing this, Jinjuan Yuanchen looked at Zhou Mubai deeply and said, "As expected of the Tianjiao ranked 9th in the Zifu Tianjiao list, but you are mistaken, this is not a stone tablet, but a stone carved on the road." He paused, after collecting the Dao law with the carved Dao stone, it is the Dao stone steel. Hear this. The face of Taoist Tuo Ling suddenly showed a look of surprise. It turns out that's how the stone tablet of Qianyuan Jianzong came from. After hearing Jinjuan Yuanchen explain so much, that Sangzhou Tianjiao present still didn't know what the other party was thinking. Yuanchen Jinjuan wants everyone, no, to be precise, he wants Zhou Mubai to help him collect the Dao law left by the true immortal level source world. Even if Chen Daoxian guessed correctly. This true monarch Yuanchen probably already knew what the treasure born in the Qingqiu demon kingdom was. The Zhangzhou cultivator was not aware of this news, because the Zhangzhou cultivator's cultivation base was low, and Qianyuan Jianzong would definitely not disclose the news to them in advance. And Yuanchen Jinjuan, as a Yuanian cultivator, must know a lot more than everyone else. He caught up with the Zhangzhou cultivator halfway to seek cooperation, and most of them came for Zhou Mubai. True monarch Yuanchen knew that with Qin Zhan's temperament, it was impossible to guard Weiyang Xiancheng, and he would definitely take the initiative to attack. Since they are taking the initiative to attack, they need a slightly lower cultivator to fight for the treasures in the source world for them. The cultivation base of Jindan cultivator is a bit high, the cultivation base of the foundation building cultivator is slightly insufficient, and the cultivation base of the Zifu cultivator is just right. The development of things was just as Jinjuan Yuanchen had guessed. The hall master of Jinhai Palace really chose to let the cultivators of Zifu compete for the treasure. At this time, a Zifu cultivator who is 9th on the Zifu Tianjiao list can play a big role. Please remember this book's first domain name. _WAP. Chapter 248. Jinjuan Yuanchen looked at Zhou Mubai with a smile, and said, "Zhou Xiaoyu. Senior." Zhou Mubai bowed, his face was calm, and he couldn't tell what he was thinking. At this point, I don't hide it from Xiaoyu Zhou. It was false that I sought cooperation with the Zhangzhou cultivator before, and it is true that I wanted Xiaoyu Zhou to go to the true immortal origin realm for me to capture the Dao law. Jinjuan Yuanchen looked at Zhou Mubai intently, and said with a smile, "I don't know. Is Zhou Xiaoyu willing to take a shot for this old man?" This. Zhou Mubai frowned and looked hesitant. Anyone who is calculated like this will definitely feel uncomfortable, even if this is the famous Yuaning Jinjuan. Zhou Mubai was ranked 9th in the Zifu Tianjiao list, even more so. Seeing that Zhou Mubai refused to let go, Jinjuan Yuanchen began to put out his bid. "As long as Zhou Xiaoyu is willing to take action for me, I will definitely thank you afterward." "Say it." Jinjuan Yuanchen patted the storage bag on his waist, and saw a red jade plaque inscribed with complex patterns flying out. "This is the Qi Feather Immortal Order of my Yuanchen Xiancheng." Seeing Qiyu Immortal Order, Zhou Mubai was startled, and looked at Jinjuan Yuanchen with a shocked expression. The Qi Feather Immortal Token is a special token created by true monarch Yuanchen after he created the foundation of Yuanchen Immortal City. There is not much surprise in this token itself. But with this token, it is possible to mobilize the forces of Yuanchen Xiancheng, including Yuanchen Jinjuan, to make a move for him. The weight of this token is not too heavy. It has been hundreds of years since Yuanchen Immortal City was established. A total of 7 Qiyu Immortal Orders were sent out, and 5 of them were taken back by Yuanchen Jinjuan. It can be seen from this. Yuanchen Xianjun and his subordinate Yuanchen Xiancheng are very trustworthy. In fact, credit is also the foundation for Yuanchen Xiancheng to stand up to this day. Because for the loose cultivator group, credit is the most important thing. If Yuanchen Xiancheng acted domineeringly and betrayed its promises, it would be absolutely impossible to get so many scattered cultivators. From the fact that Yuanchen Jinjuan sent 7 Akabane Immortal Orders to the outside world, and he has kept his promise and done 5 things for others within his power, we can see how good Yuanshan Zhenjin's reputation is. Even if you count the Scarlet Feather Immortal token he is giving now, there are only 3 Scarlet Feather Immortal tokens circulating in Yuanshan Xiancheng. A Akabane Immortal token may be of little value to a loose cultivator. But for a cultivator family power, it means that there will be an extra nascent soul true monarch and a huge immortal city behind it. The Zhou family seized the throne of the number 1 family in Cangzhou. How could Zhou Mubai not be moved? Seeing the shocked expression on Zhou Mubai's face, Xianjun Yuanshan smiled and said, "As long as you can capture the Dao law left over from the true immortal origin realm for me, this Chi Feather Immortal Order belongs to your Zhou family. In addition, my Yuanshan Immortal City will also give you various resources worth more than 10 billion spirit stones, and your Zhou family members can come to my Yuanshan Immortal City to choose by yourself. A Akabane Immortal Order, plus a resource worth 10 billion spirit stones. These 2 conditions, no matter which one it is, are enough to make the Zhou family's heart move." The Red Feather Immortal Order meant that there was a nascent soul cultivator behind the Zhou family from now on, and the resources worth tens of billions of spirit stones had a greater effect on the Zhou family at this stage. As we all know, if a cultivator family wants to grow and develop, resources are the most important thing. Because only with sufficient resources, the strength of the family cultivator will steadily increase. Whether it is cultivating spiritual veins, developing the size of the family population, operating family industries, and cultivating family monks, all of them are inseparable from resources. And the resources of tens of billions of spirit stones will undoubtedly give the Zhou family the wings to take off. In terms of family profitability, the Chen family on Shuanghu Island is currently the top family in Cangzhou at present, even more profitable than the Zhou family in Guang'an Prefecture. Even so, the Chen family earned less than 500 million spirit stones last year after deducting the family's various expenses. Not to mention the Zhou family of Guang'an House, whose profitability is not as good as that of the Chen family. The current Zhou family, after deducting the various consumptions of the clan, can earn a pure profit of 100 million spirit stones a year and burn high incense. The resources of 10 billion spirit stones are equivalent to the accumulation of the Zhou family for 100 years. Such a terrifying amount of resources can only be taken out by true monarch Yuanshan, who holds an immortal city with a population of tens of millions. If I were to be any nascent soul cultivator, I'm afraid I wouldn't be able to come up with such a large sum of money. Loose cultivator, nascent soul cultivator need not say more. In Wanxinghai, the loose cultivators of Yuanying are basically the guests of Chenyuan Jianzong, and the salary they receive from Chenyuan Jianzong every year is only enough for their cultivation needs. If you want to earn more spirit stones, you have to rely on your own private work. But how many private jobs does a nascent soul cultivator have to take to earn 10 billion spirit stones? The situation of the Yuanying monks trained by Chenyuan Jianzong since childhood is basically the same. Although their salaries are a little higher than those of the loose cultivators, they are also limited. It's just that most of these nascent soul cultivators are inextricably related to Wan Xinghai's immortal cultivation clan, and they can share an extra income from these immortal cultivation clan. It has to be said that he is much richer than the loose cultivator Yuanying cultivator. But no matter how rich they are, few of them can come up with a huge sum of 10 billion spirit stones. In addition to the Yuanying monks of Chenyuan Jianzong, Wanxinghai also has a kind of Yuanying monks, that is, the Yuanying monks in the Shouxian family. Such as the ancestors of the Jiang family in Taizhou and the ancestors of the Ji family in Jingzhou. In terms of resource mobilization ability, the ancestor of the Jiang family is indeed much stronger than an ordinary Yuanying Zhenjuan in Chenyuan Jianzong. But these resources are theoretically owned by the entire Jiang family. Even old ancestor Jiang would not be able to use all the spiritual stones and resources of the Jiang family to pay for him personally. This is the same even for Chen Daoxian, who has absolute power and prestige in the Chen family. If Chen Daoxian smashed all the spiritual stones and resources of the family into it for his own sake, the cultivator of the Chen family would definitely have complaints in his heart if he didn't say it. Not to mention the powers of other immortal clans, it is impossible for Chen Daoxian to have the prestige of Chen Daoxian in the Chen family. But Jinjuan Yuanchen is different. First of all, he is an unrestrained loose cultivator, and secondly, Yuanchen Xianqing belongs to him personally. Even if he packaged and sold Yuanchen Xianqing, no one could accuse him of anything. I have to say that true monarch Yuanchen, who can build a huge immortal city at the junction of the three states, is the only one among Yuanying monks in terms of wealth. In front of the other side, the Qin family, who is in the middle of fighting for gold, is far from enough to see. Okay. After all, Zhou Mubai couldn't resist the price offered by true monarch Yuanchen, and reached out to take the quaint engraved stone. Seeing Zhou Mubai taking the engraved stone, Jinjuan Yuanchen nodded with a smile. This old man is waiting for your triumph. Inherit the auspicious words of seniors. Zhou Mubai bowed his hand solemnly. Immediately, Jinjuan Yuanchen looked at Henry Zhang and Taoist Tuoling again, and asked with a smile, "Where are you two?" Taoist Tuoling swallowed unconsciously and said, "Senior is also willing to give us this price." Yuanchen Jinjuan shook his head. It is extremely difficult to collect the Tao Law, but there is more than one Tao Law in the true immortal origin realm. You can focus on the next level Tao Law. Therefore, the price I will give you is lower, and there are only various resources worth 1 billion spirit stones. Hear this. Taoist Tuoling was a little unhappy, and the feeling was that he despised him and Henry Zhang. But thinking of Zhou Mubai's perverted strength, Taoist Tuoling was relieved. Although everyone is a cultivator on the Zifu Tianjiao list, Zhou Mubai's strength is obviously much higher than that of him and Henry Zhang. He estimated that Zhou Mubai, who created his own sword art, was probably not inferior to the weaker Jindan cultivator in terms of strength. Okay. Before waiting for Taoist Tuoling to speak, Henry Zhang nodded in agreement. Seeing Henry Zhang agreeing, Taoist Tuoling could only nod his head. Two more cultivators from the Zifu Tianjiao list agreed to help him capture the Tao Law, and true monarch Yuanchen was even more satisfied. Unsurprisingly, the three cultivators of the Zifu Tianjiao ranking list will definitely be able to achieve something in the real fairyland. Although the human race monks said that they would send 1,000 Zifu monks, with the strength of Zhou Mubai, the three arrogant Zifu monks, they dared not say that it is indeed possible to fight 100 against 100. Aside, Qin Daoxian seems to be forgotten by everyone. Zhou Mubai glanced at him and wanted to say something, but he didn't say anything after all. Yuanchen Jinjuan continued, "There are three kinds of the most valuable treasures in the true immortal origin realm, and the first one is naturally the Tao Law. The second-ranked treasure is called blood marrow, which is the treasure of body refining. The third-ranked treasure is called primordial qi essence, which is a treasure that can directly improve the cultivator's qi cultivation. In addition to the Tao Law, the remaining two treasures, no matter how much you obtain, are considered as your own gains. Whether it is traded with others or used by your own family cultivators, you are all at your own disposal." Really? Taoist Tuoling's eyes lit up. Tianzhu Qin's own voice transmission, how can there be fakes? Hearing this news, not only Taoist Tuoling, but even Zhou Mubai was faintly excited. Although he is said to be the 9th cultivator on the Zifu Tianjiao list, in fact, his cultivation base is only the 4th floor of Zifu. This is the result of his desperate use of various precious elixir with the support of his family. Zhou Mubai's rise didn't take long. Although he has practiced for dozens or hundreds of years, his real rise was only after he realized the sword intent. This period of time, strictly speaking, was less than 50 years. In 50 years, not only from the foundation cultivation practice to the 4th floor of the Purple Mansion, but also the swordsmanship has reached the realm of sword intent, and he has created his own swordsmanship and perfected his own swordsmanship. This kind of achievement, even if it is compared among all the cultivators of the Zifu of Qianyuan Jianzong, is still among the top ones. Although Zhou Mubai also practiced the way of body, the main way of practice was still the way of qi. Therefore, when Zhou Mubai heard the essence of vitality that could directly improve his cultivation, Zhou Mubai couldn't hold back his excitement. His kendo has already reached the 3rd level. Logically speaking, as long as the cultivation level is sufficient, he can break through the golden core now. But unfortunately, his realm improved too fast, and his cultivation was a drag. In the world of immortals, this situation is extremely rare. Generally speaking, at the beginning of a monk's practice, his cultivation base improved faster than his realm. Among the cultivators in the Qi refining period, how many people can understand what the Dao realm is? Even Zhou Mubai only realized the meaning of the sword during the foundation building period and stepped into the threshold of swordsmanship. Even so, his Dao realm at that time was lower than his own cultivation. It was not until he entered the Zifu cultivation base and the Kendo realm advanced by leaps and bounds that the Dao realm surpassed his own cultivation realm. Compared with Zhou Mubai, Chen Daoxuan's situation is more serious. He understood the sword intent during the Qi refining period and stepped into the threshold of the sword way. That is to say, Chen Daoxuan's realm was already equal to his cultivation level during the Qi refining period. And at the foundation building stage, his swordsmanship level has soared, but his cultivation has been slow to keep up. Although Chen Daoxuan's speed of improving his cultivation was already at the level of an evildoer in the eyes of other foundation building cultivators, he was helpless to improve his realm faster. Actually, this is not a good thing. When a cultivator is on the way to practice, if his realm is not enough, he will encounter a bottleneck in the breakthrough of his own cultivation, and if his cultivation is not enough, the comprehension of the Tao seems to be separated by a layer of veil, and the difficulty soars. A monk's cultivation and realm have always been two things that complement each other. This is also the reason why the gap between the monks became smaller and smaller when they reached the Jindan stage or even the nascent soul stage. Because of the cultivation of nascent soul, the realm of monks is basically the same as that of cultivation. Those who can cultivate in the nascent soul and achieve the cultivation of the realm leading the realm are indeed the evildoers among the evildoers. Don't look at Zhou Mubai's current position as the 9th in the Zifu Tianjiao ranking, and his realm is temporarily ahead of his cultivation, but when he breaks through to the golden core stage, it would be good if his realm and cultivation are on the same level. As for the nascent soul stage, whether Zhou Mubai can cultivate to that level is a matter of two things. Compared to Zhou Mubai, it was Chen Daoxian who really felt a headache because of his cultivation. Because of the existence of the Hongmeng Enlightenment Classic, Chen Daoxuan's speed in comprehending the Tao was destined to be faster than the speed at which he improved his cultivation. In the world of cultivating immortals, the only way to quickly improve one's cultivation is undoubtedly to devour elixir. But even if Chen Daoxian devoured the elixir crazily, he still couldn't keep up with the speed of the improvement of the Great Tao realm, so that his Siyu sword intent was still stuck at the peak of the second level, unable to advance an inch. This is also the reason why he chose to find another way to understand the space-like sword intent. Anyway, his speed in comprehending sword intent is fast enough, and his cultivation is slow to improve. It is better to comprehend one more sword intent. I just didn't expect that Chen Daoxian, with the blessing of 30 times his comprehension, realized the complete spatial sword intent, which was an unexpected surprise. Now, when Chen Daoxian heard that there was a treasure that directly improved his cultivation in the real immortal level Jiayuan, how could he remain calm? Look at the excited crowd. True monarch Yuanchen frowned and said, "Don't be in a hurry to be happy. When you go to the true immortal origin realm to capture the treasure, you will not only encounter the world monsters of the 3 major demon kingdoms, but also encounter the secret hands of my human race monks." Human monks secretly? Henry Zhang frowned. Don't believe it, Jinjuan Yuanchen shook his head. I don't have much dealings with the Ji family cultivators, but the Jiang family cultivators can definitely do such a thing. Hearing this, Chen Daoxian glanced at Jinjuan Yuanchen in surprise. There have been rumors from the outside that Jinjuan Yuanchen was originally a monk in Taizhou, but was forced out of Taizhou by the Jiang family, and only then did he establish the foundation of Yuanchen Xiancheng. Now it seems that this rumor is probably true. Please remember this book's first domain name. _WAP. Chapter 249. If you have nothing to do, go back and prepare as soon as possible. After 3 days of rest, we will go to the Qingqiu demon country together. Jinjuan Yuanchen waved his hand. Seeing the other party's order to evict guests, Zhou Mubai and the others naturally wouldn't stay here, and they all said goodbye. From start to finish. This true monarch Yuanqin never asked Qin Daoxian who came with everyone. In his opinion, although Qin Daoxian is a sword cultivator, he only has a foundation building cultivator. Although there are more base building cultivators in the competition for the true immortal origin realm, they can only be regarded as cannon fodder at most. Compared with the cultivators of the Zifu, the base building cultivators have no advantages, and even the sword cultivators of the foundation building period are hardly comparable to the Zifu cultivators. Even if Qin Daoxuan's talent is extraordinary, he can be comparable to the ordinary Zifu cultivator. But an ordinary Zifu cultivator is not worth the investment of Yuanqin Zhenjuan at all. What Yuanqin Zhenjuan needs is a leader among the Zifu cultivators, preferably Tianjiao on the Zifu Tianjiao list. Only this level of Zifu cultivator can play a role in the next battle for the true immortal origin realm. Leaving the temporary immortal mansion of true monarch Yuanqin, the four handed farewell to each other. Brother Mubai, Brother Daoxian, Brother Xianling, take the next step. Daoist Hualing was a little impatient. The resources of 1 billion spirit stones are completely available to the family of Daoist Hualing, but the wealth of the family belongs to the family. This time, he helped Zhenjuan Yuanqin seize the Dao law, which is equivalent to taking private work. All gains are his own. Of course the two cannot be confused. Besides, although Daoist Hualing was the heir to the Zhao clan of Xuan House, he was only the heir after all. In order to take over the position of family patriarch steadily, in addition to maintaining their own strengths, Daoist Hualing also needs to cultivate a large number of cronies within the clan. And these all require resources. The immortal cultivating clan of Wan Xinghai, both in terms of population size and sphere of influence, are not comparable to the current Qin family. The size of the family is huge, and with it, there will be various problems. For example, in addition to Daoist Hualing, the Zhao family in Xuan Mansion also had an alternative patriarch heir. And their cultivation base has also reached the Purple Palace period. Relatively speaking, among the four, Hualing Taoist was the one with the most pressure. There is no need to say more about the Qin family on Shuanghu Island. No one can compete with Qin Daoxian. Although he is the young patriarch now, the power in the Qin family is probably more powerful than that of the patriarch of any immortal clan. In this regard, although Zhou Mubai is not comparable to Qin Daoxian, as the most talented cultivator of the Zhou family, Zhou Mubai's position as the next patriarch of the Zhou family is basically stable. The same is true of Henry Zhang. As a sword cultivator of the Zifu period, no one in the Zhang family of Jinan can compete with him. Therefore, from this point of view, Daoist Hualing needs more resources than the other three to stabilize his position as the heir of the patriarch. Watching Hualing Daoist leave, Zhou Mubai glanced at Qin Daoxian and said, "Brother Qin, Brother Zhang, I will go back first." Qin Daoxian and Henry Zhang nodded. Seeing Daoist Hualing and Zhou Mubai leaving, before waiting for Henry Zhang to leave, Qin Daoxian said, "Brother Zhang, wait a minute." Henry Zhang stopped and looked at him with questioning eyes. Qin Daoxian said, "Brother Zhang, I'm not talented, I also want to go to the real immortal origin realm to have a try. Brother Qin, have you thought about it?" Hearing that Qin Daoxian wanted to go to the real fairyland, Henry Zhang couldn't help but widen his eyes. Although he knew that Qin Daoxuan's strength was not weak, in the battle of Zhangzhou Xianqing, he even won the first merit. But in the end, Qin Daoxian just used a trick to kill a lot of those zombies without intelligence. In terms of real strength, it is not bad that Qin Daoxian is comparable to the most common Zifu cultivator. If you go to true immortal origin realm, in all likelihood, you will become cannon fodder. This time, I went to the true immortal origin realm to compete for the Dao law, not relying on the monk's ability to abuse vegetables, but the actual personal strength. In this regard, Qin Daoxian has no advantage. After all, Qin Daoxuan's cultivation is a big level lower than that of him, Zhou Mubai and others. Even if Qin Daoxuan's kendo level is not weaker than his, the real strength gap between the two is probably more than 10 times. Chen Daoxian didn't know what the other party was thinking, nodded and smiled. "I'll think about it clearly." "All right." Seeing that Chen Daoxuan's eyes were firm, Henry Zhang knew that no matter how persuaded he was, it was estimated that the other party would not listen. Chen Daoxian can reach the pinnacle of tangible sword intent when he cultivates the foundation, and the firmness of his Taoism must be far beyond ordinary people. Once such a person makes a decision, it will not change at all. Henry Zhang paused. "Brother Chen, what does he want me to do?" Chen Daoxian bowed his hands. "I want to take the liberty to ask, what is the strength of the monks on the Zifu Tianjiao list?" Hear this question. Henry Zhang frowned. The gap between the monks who are ranked at the bottom of the Zifu Tianjiao list may not be large, but the higher the ranking, the greater the gap between monks, especially the top 10. The Zifu Tianjiao list recorded a total of 100 Zifu cultivators in Wanxinghai. Most of these Zifu cultivators were in the late period of Zifu, but there were also special ones, such as Brother Zhou, who was only in the middle of Zifu. I can't guess how strong Brother Zhou is. After all, he has already stepped out of his own swordsmanship. Speaking of myself, I am now on the 8th floor of the Purple Mansion, at the peak of the 2nd level of sword intent, ranking 43rd on the Purple Mansion Tianjiao list. If I use the newly invented meteorite ink wall of Qianyuan Jianzong to calculate, if I make a full shot, the attack limit power is close to 800. He paused. Of course, the meteorite wall can only test the cultivator's attack limit. The cultivator's specific strength does not depend entirely on the attack, and there are other aspects. However, according to what I know, the last person on the Zifu Tianjiao list has an attacking limit power of more than 500. 500. Chen Daoxian nodded. This value is a relatively objective reflection of how strong the monks in the Zifu Tianjiao ranking are. He originally estimated that Zhou Mubai's attack limit was at least 700. Now it seems that the opponent is still far underestimated. After all, even Henry Zhang, who is ranked 43rd on the Zifu Tianjiao list, has an attack power of 800, his sword intent is one level higher, and Zhou Mubai, who has stepped out of his own swordsmanship, has absolutely no reason to be weaker than Henry Zhang. Chen Daoxian has practiced the magical powers of 3 heads and 6 arms, which can greatly increase the attack limit. As Zhou Mubai, who is the 9th in the Zifu Tianjiao list, doesn't he have a secret method to press the bottom of the box? Bullshit. Chen Daoxian believed that the best of these Zifu monks all had their own desperate means. Even the list of Zifu Tianjiao ranking can only be used as a reference at best. The 30th place on the Zifu Tianjiao list must not be the opponent of the 20th place. Uncertain. The result of the battle between the two will not be known until the last moment. Chen Daoxuan's current cultivation base is only the 5th layer of foundation building and the 4th layer of flesh and blood. Even if you use the magical powers of Dharma likeness, the strength of Qi refining and body refining are combined, and the basic attack is only 14. Including the realm bonus and the magic weapon bonus, it is about a 5-fold increase, which is 70. This is Chen Daoxuan's strongest attack with 3 heads and 6 arms. This level, in the ordinary Zifu cultivator, seems to be quite good, even comparable to the weaker late Zifu cultivator. But if he wants to compare with the monks on the Zifu Tianjiao list, he is still far behind. However, before coming to Weiyang Xiancheng, Chen Daoxian just learned one of the 3-headed and 6-armed attacking skills, and the 6 arms attack together. The 6-armed attack can combine 6 attacks into one, increasing by 6 times. It can be said to be the most essential part of the 3-headed 6-armed attack. Although the consumption of the 6-armed strike is extremely high. Every time he used it, Chen Daoxian Qi Hai Zhen Yuan would probably consume nearly half of it. But this is nothing to him who has the 3rd-grade Good Fortune White Lotus as a reserve of true essence, and he can use the 6-armed strike as a regular trick. In this way, Chen Daoxuan's ultimate attack power instantly increased 6 times, reaching as much as 420, which is already very close to the Tianjiao on the Zifu Tianjiao list. Coupled with the divine power of calmness and divine light that he obtained from Shinjue Zhenren, it can be described as a fighting skill. Calculated comprehensively. Chen Daoxuan's strength is definitely comparable to the Tianjiao on the Zifu Tianjiao list, at least the Tianjiao who ranks lower. Seeing that Chen Daoxian did not speak, Henry Zhang thought that he was frightened by his own words, and quickly persuaded, "Brother Chen, I know that you entered the real immortal realm to capture the essence of vitality that can quickly improve your cultivation, but the essence of vitality is difficult to store. After the monks get it, they can only use it or sell it quickly. There are so many monks who have entered the true immortal origin realm this time, you can buy some after the fact, there is no need to take risks." As a friend, Henry Zhang was able to speak to this point, and it was already a deep conversation. But in the Yunshao Palace of Qianyuan Jianzong, Chen Daoxian was not afraid of danger, and severely frustrated Yu Wadeo's arrogance, making Henry Zhang wish to introduce Chen Daoxian as a confidant. He said these words at this time, completely from the heart. Chen Daoxian nodded, and then shook his head again. "I know, but I still want to go in and have a go." Look at each other. Seeing Chen Daoxuan's firm eyes, Henry Zhang cupped his hands and said, "Then I wish us victory." Triumphant return. The two looked at each other and smiled, and they all turned into light and disappeared into the sky. Out of Weiyang Xianqing. Chen Daoxian searched for a long time, and finally found the cultivator army of the Chen family in the chaotic military camp. Compared to the chaos when it first came, the military camp where the cultivators came to aid had been placed and finally calmed down. It's just that the monks in the military camp wearing spirit armor and constantly patrolling make people feel depressed. Young Patriarch. Seeing Chen Daoxian, Chen Fusheng, who was appeasing the monks, said in surprise. Chen Daoxian nodded, "Is it still a habit to live here?" "It's definitely not comparable to the barracks on Sequoia Island," Chen Fusheng shook his head, "but just now I received news that after checking everyone's identities, we will be stationed in Weiyang Xianqing." Speaking of this, Chen Fusheng's still immature face showed a hint of expectation. "Young Patriarch, what is the Weiyang Xianqing? Is it as big as the Guang'an Palace Xianqing?" Although the Taizhou entrance is very large, the Weiyang Xianqing that Chen Fusheng and the others can see is limited after all. Only through the passage can we truly see the splendor of Weiyang Immortal City. Chen Daoxian smiled and shook his head. "When you are stationed there tomorrow, you will know." Hey, hearing this, Chen Fusheng smiled slyly. "You don't have to wait for tomorrow, someone just came to inform you that 5,000 foundation building cultivators will be selected to go to Weiyang Xianqing, and I have already signed up." What? Hearing this, Chen Daoxian looked at Chen Fusheng in shock and anger. "Why did you decide this matter without waiting for me to discuss it? Do you know what you are going to do?" The smile on Chen Fusheng's immature face slowly subsided. He raised his head, looked at Chen Daoxian who was half a head taller than himself, and said seriously, "Young Patriarch, I know. This trip is to explore the true immortal level source realm. Weiyang Xianqing will send 10,000 foundation building monks and 1,000 Zifu monks to go there together. Of course, the foundation level and Zifu level world monsters sent by the major demon countries will be more. When Qianyuan Jianzong came to select people, they all told us." Hearing this, Chen Daoxuan's eyebrows and heart beat wildly, and he suppressed his anger and said, "Is it the monk of Qianyuan Jianzong who forced you?" Chen Fusheng shook his head. "Then why are you?" "Because I know that the young patriarch will definitely go," Chen Fusheng said firmly. When Chen Daoxian heard this, he almost laughed angrily. He waved his hand angrily. "Are you so sure? Or do you think that after the foundation is established, you will be invincible in the world, and you will start to be arrogant?" Fusheng dare not. Chen Fusheng lowered his head. "It's just that I don't want to see the young patriarch fighting alone. What Fusheng did today is not for anything else, but to prove that all the cultivators of my Chen family follow the young patriarch, not to compare, but from the bottom of our hearts, each of us regards the young patriarch as the pride of my Chen family." Speaking of this, Chen Fusheng looked at Chen Daoxian with faint tears in his eyes. Chen Daoxuan's heart was touched when he saw his eyes. This kind of look is very similar to the look in Chen Ziyan's eyes when he looked at him at the beginning, but there are some new things, such as reverence from the heart. "You boy, are you waiting for me here? Chen Daoxuan's tone softened. Why, I punish you, are you upset? No, Chen Fusheng shook his head. However, the young patriarch punished me. Fusheng has no complaints, but you can't misunderstand us, we are really not for comparison, let alone for the reputation of being invincible at the same level. Our military monks are wrong, I admit, but it is by no means that we do not think about practicing. On the contrary, it is precisely because our military monks carry the family's expectations, so we want to do better than others. Looking at the half-sized boy in front of him, Chen Daoxian couldn't help shaking his head. Okay, I know, I'm blaming you guys, okay. Chen Daoxian shook his head. How old are you? You still need to be coaxed. When Chen Fusheng heard this, he smirked. Just to prove this, you don't even want to die. Chen Daoxian said with a serious tone, do you know how dangerous this trip will be? I know, but you said, young patriarch, that the real strong never grow up in a greenhouse. Although this trip is dangerous, I think the chance is greater than the danger. More importantly, I can accompany the young patriarch to fight together. Stinky boy. Chen Daoxian shook his head, looked at him and said, let's go and return together. Chen Fusheng nodded and said seriously, let's go and return together. Please remember this book's first domain name. _WAP. Chapter 250. 3 days later. 13 giant spirit boats set out from the city of Never-Young Immortals, heading towards the Qingqiu Demon Nation. Look carefully. These spirit boats are roughly divided into 4 camps, namely the monks of the Qianyuan Sword Sect and the family monks of Taizhou, Jingzhou, and Cangzhou. As for the other loose cultivators, they were mixed in the 4 major camps. The 11,000 monks on this trip were all carefully selected by the Qianyuan Sword Sect. Among these cultivators, the general cultivation base has reached the 7th floor of the foundation building. A first-level foundation building cultivator like Chen Fusheng is definitely an outlier among this group of cultivators. Of course, the strength of a cultivator is not entirely dependent on his cultivation. Chen Fusheng's identity as Jianqiu was an important reason for his selection. Headed on the spirit boat, the master of Jinhai Palace and the other 6 true sovereigns of nascent soul stood side by side. Palace Master Qin, Jinjuan Yuanchen looked back at the direction of Weiyang Xianqing. Is it wrong to let Dao Yujiang stay in Weiyang Xianqing alone? Before Qin Zhan could speak, another Yuaning ancestor of the Jiang family was dissatisfied and said, what do you mean by Daoist Yuanchen? My Jiang family has been guarding Weiyang Xianqing for so many years, is there still something wrong? This is not what this seat means. Qin Zhan waved his hand and interrupted the dispute between the two. Okay, with Jiang Daoyu's late Yuaning cultivation base, even if he encounters a world demon who takes a surprise attack on Weiyang Xianqing, it is enough to send us a message, and it will be fine. Hear this. Jinjuan Yuanchen nodded. Perhaps it was because he suffered a big loss in the hands of the Jiang family in his early years, and Jinjuan Yuanchen has always maintained a vigilant attitude towards the Jiang family. Seeing that Jinjuan Yuanchen and the Jiang family smelled of gunpowder, old ancestor Ji became a peacemaker and said with a smile, I heard that Daoist Yuanchen is very well prepared this time, even Zhou Mubai, who is 9th in the Zifu Tianjiao list, please move. Already? Speaking of which, Zhou Mubai is probably the strongest among this group of cultivators in the Purple Mansion, right? Hearing this, Jinjuan Yuanchen laughed and waved his hand, don't dare. The Zifu Tianjiao ranking is only a rough ranking based on the record and the cultivation realm of the monks. It is hard to say which monks are stronger or weaker on the list. Very. He paused. Your Ji family's arrogances, Ji Yancheng and Ji Yanfeng, are both the top 50 arrogances in the Zifu arrogance list. Does fellow Daoist Ji think that these 2 arrogances of your JIS family must be weaker than Zhou Mubai? Besides, if you want to seize the Dao law, in addition to the strength of the cultivator, it also depends on the luck of the cultivator. Seeing Yuan Chen's appearance that he was cheap and sold well, Old Ancestor Ji pointed at Jinjuan Yuanchen, smiled and shook his head. However, Jinjuan Yuanchen is right in saying that in order to capture the Tao Law and the true immortal origin realm, in addition to the strength of the cultivator, it also depends on the luck of the cultivator. If the cultivator is unlucky and is besieged by many cultivators of the Purple House, let alone capturing the Tao Law, it will be difficult to even save his life. You must know that only the Weiyang Xianqing side sent 1,000 cultivators from the Zifu. As the host of the true demon realm, the three major demon nations, Qingqiu, Jia, and Shihua, will only send more demons from the Zifu realm. Moreover, this 1,000 Zifu cultivators are just the candidates that Weiyang Xianqing is going to send. Specifically, the three major demons will not agree to it, and they need to discuss them with the other party. However, with the Hall Master of Jinhai Palace, there shouldn't be a big problem. Cangzhou Monk Camp. On a giant spirit boat. This is. Chen Daoxian took the jade slip handed over by Henry Zhang, looked up at him, and wondered. This is the information that Jinjuan Yuanchen sent to me yesterday. It is about the strongest among the demons in the Zifu world. Hearing this, Chen Daoxian's eyes narrowed, and he was about to sink his consciousness into it. Half an hour. He just withdrew his consciousness. Brother Zhang, thank you for your kindness. Chen Daoxian said solemnly. Henry Zhang smiled, no need to say thank you, the cultivators of Zifu have a share of this information, and with Brother Chen's strength, they should have a share. As he said that, he turned his head to look in the direction of the Qingqiu demon nation. Among the three major demon countries, the Qingqiu demon nation and the Jia demon nation are good to say, although there are also world demons that are comparable to the Tianjiao list of my Wangxinghai Zifu Tianjiao, but in general, there is no strong person at the level of Brother Zhou. But the Lion Camel country is different, among their Zifu world monsters, there is a pervert. Speaking of this, Henry Zhang's face became solemn. This world demon is the direct descendant of the Lion and Camel country's lord, and his body is a green lion spirit. According to the information provided by Senior Yuan Chen, the Lion and Camel country's lord, the blood descendant, is an existence known as the one who is expected to become a demon master. I hope to become a demon master. Chen Daoxian's eyes became more solemn than ever. You must know that even if it is Zhou Mubai, the outside world only thinks that he can become a Jindan cultivator, but no one dares to assert whether he can become the Yuanying Jinjuan with a lifespan of 3,000 years. Even, the probability that Zhou Mubai could not become Yuanying Jinjuan was even greater. In Wangxinghai, generations of Zifu Tianjiao are like crucian carp crossing the river, but how many people can really become Yuanying Jinjuan? Not to mention that Zhou Mubai is only the 9th in the Zifu Tianjiao list. Even if he is the first in the Zifu Tianjiao list, who can guarantee that he will definitely become a nascent soul cultivator in the future? You know, from the practice of Zifu to nascent soul, I don't know how many hardships I encountered. Any wrong step will lead to the cultivator's eternal fate. Therefore, the so-called arrogance and evil spirits will not be looked down upon by other true monarchs until they truly become the nascent soul monks on the suppressing side. However, this Purple Mansion realm demon from Lion Camel country is known as a promising demon master. This is not an ordinary evaluation, which means that this blue lion spirit from Lion Camel nation is definitely different from the ordinary Purple Mansion realm demon. Place. However, this is something extraordinary, which was not mentioned in the information given by Jinjuan Yuanchen. After all, cultivator Wan Xinghai knew too little about the major demon kingdoms in the real demon world. The information that true monarch Yuanchen came up with was obtained from the Hall Master of Jinhai Palace. Henry Zhang continued, this information mentions that there are 19 demons in the Zifu world worth noting, including 6 in the Qingqiu demon country, 5 in the extreme night demon country, and 8 in the lion and camel demon country. According to the evaluation of Qianyuan Jianzong, the 19 Zifu world monsters are the weakest, and they are all comparable to the Tianjiao Zifu on my Zifu Tianjiao list. Chen Daoxian frowned, is the strength of the demon so strong? Yes, Zhang Xianling sighed, I just got this information, I also feel terrible, the boundaries of these 3 big demon kingdoms combined are no more than the land of my Wangxinghai and the 3 states, but they are comparable to the Zifu Tianjiao list. There are actually as many as 19. This means that the world monsters of the same rank are even stronger than our human race monks. Brother Zhang, how strong are we here? You mean Tianjiao Zifu? Chen Daoxian nodded. Henry Zhang thought for a while and said, as far as I know, Cangzhou has 3 Tianjiao Zifu, Taizhou has more, there are 5, Jingzhou has 3, and Qianyuan Jianzong sent several Tianjiao Zifu, I don't know. That is to say, we have a total of 11 Tianjiao Zifu here. Right. Henry Zhang nodded, there are at least 11, I think with the means of the Qin Palace Master, there must be more than 11, but it will not be more than the Tianjiao Zifu in the world demon. Chen Daoxian knew that this was true. Because Qianyuan Jianzong did not have many Tianjiao Zifu in total. This year's Zifu Tianjiao list monks, Qianyuan Jianzong occupied not many places, it seems that there are only 10 Zifu monks on the list. It is impossible for the master of Jinhai Palace to send all the Tianjiao Zifu in the sect. He doesn't have that much power either. You must know that these Tianjiao Zifu all belong to different hall masters and elders of Qianyuan Jianzong. He Qin Zhan is not the suzerain of Qianyuan sword sect, and he can mobilize so many Tianjiao Zifu to come to the real demon world with one decree. Seeing that Chen Daoxuan's expression was a little heavy, Henry Zhang comforted, Brother Chen, don't worry, although Tianjiao Zifu is far more powerful than ordinary Zifu cultivators, in the end, it is still Zifu cultivator. Not to mention the cultivators of the Zifu, what about the cultivators of Jindan? We have 1,000 cultivators of the Zifu on this trip, which cultivator of Jindan can stop them? Hear this. Chen Daoxian smiled and nodded. But his heavy heart did not ease. In terms of high-end combat power, the Wan Xinghai cultivator did not have an advantage. Even if the cultivator Wan Xinghai added him, there were only 12 Tianjiao Zifu level combat powers. On the other side of the world demon, there are 19. There is a difference of 7 places between the two, and this is based on the premise that the great Yuan demon nation does not participate. Otherwise, the situation will only become more chaotic. As for the ordinary Zifu level powerhouses, there are as many as 1,000 on Wan Xinghai's side, but the world monsters will only send more. It's not that Wan Xinghai can't send more Zifu monks, but this is the real demon world after all. If Qianyuan Jianzong makes a big splash, it will send 10,000 or more Zifu monks. Maybe it will cause the 3 major demon nations to join forces to deal with Weiyang Xiancheng, and even detonate the war between Wan Xinghai and the major demon nations ahead of time. Now dispatching 1,000 cultivators from the Purple Mansion, with this strength, any of the 3 major demon nations can come up with a lineup that is comparable to them, so that the 3 major demon nations will not be completely united. The distance between Qingqiu Demon Country and Weiyang Immortal City is not far. Less than a stick of incense time. 13 spirit boats flew into the territory of the Qingqiu Demon Nation. Along the way, Chen Daoxian looked down from the spirit boat and saw the situation in the Qingqiu Demon Country. But the scene he saw almost made him uneasy. Henry Zhang saw the scene along the way, and his eyebrows were also beating wildly, and he said in a low voice, "These bastards." Qingqiu Demon Country. Cities are built, and these cities are all surrounded by towering walls. Inside the fence is the blood food kept by the Qingqiu Demon Nation. These blood and food are nothing else, they are the human race who are the spirits of all things, and they are ordinary human races. Qingqiu Demon Nation and Dayuan Demon Nation have completely different ways of raising human races. The Great Yuan Demon Nation adopts the method of raising gu, and cultivates a group of powerful people of the human race for the food of the demons. The way the Qingqiu Demon Nation chose to keep the human race was much more extensive. Just like ordinary human races build pigsties and sheepfolds, they keep a large number of mortals in cities and go to the cities to enjoy them regularly. Along the way, Chen Daoxian even saw the bounded demons slaughtering and devouring the mortals in the city. Although the human race of the real demon world and the human race of Wangxinghai belong to 2 worlds. But the 2 are of the same race after all. Below, in an unknown small town, a head of 9 demon foxes displayed their true bodies, and the huge demon bodies nearly folded up a third of a small town. This purple mansion-level world monster was lying there, comfortably opening his mouth and swallowing in the direction of the town. With its swallowing, a terrifying demon wind blew in the town, and countless mortals and domestic animals flew towards the mouths of the 9 demon foxes. After about a third of the meal, the Zifu world demon stopped with satisfaction. Seeing this scene, no cultivator Wan Xinghai could bear it. The head of the Zhenhai Palace had a livid face, and immediately waved down with a palm. Across hundreds of miles, this Zifu world demon turned into powder in Qin Zhan's hands, dissipating between the heavens and the earth. Killing a Zifu world demon, the atmosphere of the team not only did not relax, but became heavier. At this moment, these monks from Wan Xinghai really understood why the so-called world monsters and human races are not at odds with each other. This is still in the real demon world. If there is a day when the world demon passage in Taizhou becomes like the source of 2 realms, I don't know what kind of scene will become of Wan Xinghai, which is still considered stable now. With the beheading of the Zifu world demon, higher-level world demons soon came to check, but after feeling the mighty terrifying aura of the Lingzhou fleet from a distance, this Jindan-level world demon didn't even dare to fight in person, so he fled wildly and escaped. Watching the Jindan world demon leave, the hall master of Zhenhai Palace did not embarrass the other party. The purpose of his trip was to participate in the competition for the true immortal level source realm, not to provoke a war between the 3 major demon kingdoms and Weiyang Xiancheng. Just a moment of anger. If they kill this Jindan-level world demon again, they are really here to provoke trouble, which is not in line with their purpose of coming to the Qingqiu demon nation. An hour later, this fleet of 13 spirit boats finally arrived in the hinterland of the Qingqiu demon nation, where the true immortal origin world was born. On the spirit boat, Chen Daoxian saw from a distance that there were 3 demon forces facing off below. It's just different from the world demon he had seen in the Great Yuan Demon Kingdom before. The world demons in the 3 major demon kingdoms below actually changed in the direction of humanoids. For example, the world demon of the Lion Camel country, the body is almost all green lion spirits. And the Lion Camel country demon below did not show its body, but had the appearance of a lion head and a human body. The ones with the highest cultivation level simply turned into human figures. Hearing Chen Daoxuan's doubts, Henry Zhang thought for a while and said, after the world demon has cultivated to the Zifu level, because the Dao law needs to be filled into the source world, it will naturally change in the direction of the human body. Although my human race is naturally weak, the human race body is the most suitable form for comprehending the laws of the Dao. Therefore, the body of the human race is also called the body of the Dao by the ancient demon clan, and it is also for this reason that the demon of the world changes into a human body. Hearing this explanation, Chen Daoxian nodded. Haven't waited for him to speak. Among the 3 world demon forces facing each other below, a roar suddenly resounded through the sky. Human monks, do you want to start a war? Say it. A slender figure rose into the sky and flew towards the fleet of spirit boats hovering in the air. The Lord of Zhenhai Palace looked at the slender figure flying towards him quickly, his eyes narrowed slightly. The Lord of Qingqiu. Please remember this book's first domain name. _WAP, you're tuning into the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.